Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I'm in the sea, sign in breathing on the opening day at the beginning. Chapter 61. The largest building in the center of UD City, the top of the casino rain banquet. With a big back and a long cross-cut scar on his face, Crocodile, dressed in a black fur coat, stood by the glass window while biting his cigar, looking down at this prosperous and glamorous city, but it was full of darkness and sin. There are footsteps approaching behind. Crocodile didn't look back. Is everything ready? Well, Mr. 1 and Mr. 2 are also ready. A female voice came from the shadow behind him. Now more than 90% of the underground organizations in Alabasta have gathered in this city. All their actions are also in our hands. Good job. Crocodile's eyes narrowed slightly. After tonight, the entire underground of Alabasta will have the master in my hands alone. Since everything is in the master, do we have to take out that fruit? Since it is a bait, it is natural to take it out, otherwise how can the fish get the bait? Crocodile said flatly. Of course, it won't really be given to them. Tonight's auction will be over to you, Vice President. In the shadow, wearing a cowboy hat, a white fur coat, and a pair of snow-white boots, with wheat-colored skin, long hair draped, and a slender body, the glamorous beauty nodded gently. Learn. After nightfall, this rainy city is brightly lit, like a pearl lit up in the desert. Groups of forces that were active in the dark began to become active and headed towards the Yuyan Casino. After Ron placed Canis in place, he headed towards the rainy banquet casino alone. Tonight, it is destined not to be quiet and peaceful. Rainy banquet casino. People from all walks of life outside gather, some in the light, and some in the dark, all to meet the organization cadres who go to the Yuyan. These people are armed and ready to fight at any time. Wearing black cropped trousers and white short-sleeved hooded sweater, Ron walked towards the gate of the rainy banquet casino calmly in the eyes of these underground forces with a hint of surprise. Ron walked into the lobby inside the Yuyan Casino. Many people looked at him, seeing only a black-haired teenager who was alone and without foreign objects. They looked away quickly. Obviously, he was treating Ron as an ordinary teenager who came to this casino to gamble, rather than participate in the auction to compete for devil fruit. It seems that this is the first time I have come to this kind of place. Ron, who was quite novel, looked around. He put his hands in the pockets of his upper body sweater, chewing on the specialty bubbling candy bought in this rainy city, and blowing bubbles from time to time. He seemed out of place among the strangely shaped, fierce and evil underground forces. His relaxed and casual appearance is also incompatible with the serious and solemn atmosphere here. Some people noticed him, and their voices were dissatisfied. Where's the kid? What's the matter with the Baroque Job Club? Can such a kid be in? Stop your eyes, kill it. Here, let the Baroque Work Agency handle it. Just as Ron was wandering around in the hall, a burly man more than 2 meters tall, carrying a big axe, and his scarred upper body blocked Ron's path. Snapped. Ron stopped, the bubbles from his mouth exploded. That's the leader of the Sand Bandits, Kokoa led. Shish, I heard that he hates weak guys the most. That kid is done. Will you slap that kid's head to pieces? The burly man named Kokoa led lowered his head and looked down at Ron, with a hint of contempt and viciousness in his eyes. You obstructive kid, get out of me. Talking. His fan-like palms waved towards Ron. Ron's eyes narrowed slightly. The palm of the burly man stopped in midair for an instant. He trembled all over, and looked at the plain, black-haired boy in front of him with horror. Cold sweat came out from his forehead like a rain, running down his cheeks. What's wrong? Some people are puzzled. Why did he stop? Isn't it afraid? Haha, it's also possible. Just now. The door on the side of the hall opened, and Mr. 3 from the Baroque workshop, Mr. 3 of Wax Fruit, walked out of it. Let everyone wait a long time, the auction is about to begin, please come in. When everyone heard the words, their expressions became serious, and they all walked towards the door. After all, the focus today is that devil fruit. Ron didn't even look at the burly man in front of him, chewing bubble gum and following the crowd towards the gate. After he leaves, the burly man swallowed, and wiped the sweat from his face in fear. That was killing intent just now. What a terrifying killing intent. That feeling is like a lamb facing a tiger, as if as long as he moves, he will immediately die here. The last person who gave him this feeling was the hero of this country, Crocodile, the sand crocodile known as Seven Warlords of the Sea. Who is that sacred guy? After entering that door, go through a few more rooms and go up a few steps. Finally came to the auction venue. The light is slightly dim like a movie hall. Everyone began to take their seats. Ron casually found a back seat and sat down quietly, waiting for the auction to begin. It didn't take long, when the lights on the booth came on. A beauty with long hair wearing a cowboy hat, a white fur coat and wheat-colored skin walked onto the booth. Oh, Ron looked at her, a slight surprise flashed in his eyes. Nico Robin, did she preside over this auction? Standing on the brightly lit booth, Nico Robin looked at the audience and smiled slightly. It seems that the guests are all here, then, the auction will start in 4 or 3-7. The first auction item. Just when the auction started. Wearing a black fur coat and cigar, Crocodile stands on the top floor of the Yuyan Casino, looking down on the city that never sleeps in the desert with ambitious eyes. Let the carnival begin. At the same time, the Baroque Workshop Mr. 1, the chopped man who ate dice fruit, Daz Bonus and the Baroque Workshop Thorn Fruit Abilities Allah, began to lead the Baroque Workshop to the Alabasta Royal Capital and the Alabasta Green City. All the underground forces in the two cities launched a surprise attack. The Baroque Work Agency, Mr. 4, Mr. 5 and Mr. 7, launched a surprise attack on the underground forces in the three cities of Yuba Oasis, Rape Blossoms, and Catlia. The Baroque Clone Fruit Ability person, Mr. 2, Bentham, was a member of the Baroque Working Society who was lying in ambush in the rain ground. They began to secretly surround the underground forces near the Yuyan, waiting for the time to come. Catch them all in one go. After tonight, there will only be one underground power in Alabasta. For Crocodile, the man behind everything, this is just the first step in realizing his pirates' plan to steal the country. Rainy Banquet Casino. After 9 items were auctioned, the atmosphere of the auction venue was lively. None of these underground cadres or leaders knew anything about what was happening outside. Finally, it's the highlight of tonight. The next item displayed is the last item of this auction. Hearing Nico Robin's words, almost everyone in the auction hall craned their necks and looked eagerly at the black cloth display stand on the stand. Nico Robin, who is now the vice president of the Baroque Working Group, lifted the black cloth, revealing the devil fruit with spiral patterns on the peel in the glass counter. Paramesha, iron fruit. The starting price is 180 million Baileys. Oh. There was a sensation in the audience. I give out 200 million Baileys. 230 million. 250 million. Don't fight lousy. 300 million Baileys. Arle Sai family wants it. For a time, all parties in the audience competed to make offers. Paramesha iron fruit. Ron looked at the devil fruit on the stand and compared it with the iron fruit on the Devil's Illustrated book he had seen in his memory. Unmistakable. It is indeed a genuine Paramesha iron fruit. Manipulate steel. If developed well, it is quite powerful. Not to mention anything else, just relying on the ability of this iron fruit to manufacture and produce weapons, you can make a lot of money. No wonder these forces are so crazy. However, Crocodile was willing to auction such a powerful devil fruit. Ron looked around, staring at the hideous and crazy faces of those who bid, then glanced at those in the dark with observation hockey, and gradually had an answer in his heart. If you want to destroy it first, you must first make it crazy. Sure enough, he was right. This devil fruit is a bait thrown by Crocodile, a bait that makes these underground forces lose their minds and fall into madness. He would never actually auction it off. As the host's vice president Nico Robin, as well as a demon fruit power in the dark, as well as the display stand that can sink at any time, are evidence. Interesting. The corners of Ron's mouth raised slightly. The bid at this time is also coming to an end. The price of the iron fruit reached 700 million Baileys, and only 2 people continued to bid for the price, or 2 forces. 760 million Pele. 780 million. 780 million Baileys once. 780 million Baileys twice. 700 million. Fight it. 800 million Baileys. If your Sitz family can offer a higher price than this, lousy surrender. If you want to pit lousy, our Moki Job Club will fight with you to the end. The largest underground gang in Yuba, the boss of the Moki Work Club, the one-eyed dragon Moki-Signs viciously attacked the eldest son of the largest gangster family in Albania, said Lay Sizzy. Nico Robin on the stage began to hammer. 800 million Baileys once, 800 million Baileys twice, 800 million Baileys. Ray Sitz clenched his fists and stared at the one-eyed dragon. But after all, he did not continue to call out the offer. 800 million Baileys, 3. Just when Nico Robin was about to strike the hammer, Cyclops Mochisian was about to show an excited smile. A figure suddenly appeared on the booth silently under everyone's eyes. I want this devil fruit. Accompanied by the calm words of the teenager. Before everyone could react, the black-haired teenager who suddenly appeared on the booth out of thin air, wearing a black cropped trousers and a white short-sleeved hoodie, stretched out his hand, and easily smashed the glass counter that was as hard as steel. The iron fruit of Paramesha was caught directly in his hand. Koya Red, the burly man who ran into Ron in the lobby before, looked at the black-haired boy on the stage holding devil fruit, his eyes shrinking sharply. It's that guy. Nico Robin then reacted. Immediately, his eyes condensed, and his arms crossed to display the ability of flower fruit. Body blossom. I saw that the mysterious and strange black-haired boy in front of her had just grown 2 arms. Before he could strangle him, his figure suddenly flashed and appeared in front of Nico Robin, with her eyes wide open. In the middle, a palm was slapped on her neck. Robin's eyes went dark for an instant, and he fell forward. Ron stretched out his hand to catch her and put it on his shoulder. Guillotine. The blade that was thrown from above was subjected to extremely heavy gravity, breaking through the air at an extremely alarming speed, and falling towards Ron below. Ron stepped on his feet and shaved, disappearing in place, avoiding the blow. The entire booth was almost destroyed. Where is the person? Where? Everyone turned their heads and looked around. The one-eyed dragon Mochi Cerns was also turned green by this sudden change. He drew the pistol from his waist and roared around, where is Lousy's iron fruit? The burly man Co-23 Yalide looked at the black-haired boy who was holding devil fruit in one hand and the deputy president of the Baroque Working Society in the other, dumbfounded. Over there. Someone saw this scene. In an instant, everyone in the audience drew their weapons and started shooting over there. As for whether it was accidentally injured, let it go. For these underground bosses who don't know how many crimes they have committed, killing is a trivial matter, and the only major thing now is to leave the Paramesha devil fruit from that guy. Before Koya Led and the people around him could realize what was happening, they were shot into a sieve by a burst of gun rain. Ron lifted his foot and swept back. A huge cyan wind blade instantly slashed all the lead bullets shot at him, slashing horizontally towards the group of underground leaders who had already been tempted by devil fruit and became greedy and crazy. Some people were unaware of being slashed by the cyan wind blade. After a few seconds, the upper body and the lower body separated, and blood spurted. The cyan wind blade stood on a pillar in the auction house unabated, and the pillar collapsed, crushing many people to death. The scene became extremely chaotic for a while. Don't try to escape. A senior agent of the Baroque Work Agency, a person with a light lion fruit ability, Mykelta, holding an umbrella, floated towards Ron. Ron didn't even look at her, and used Tempest Kick again. The cyan wind blade, which was twice as large as before, cut through the walls directly and rushed out of the Yuyan Casino. Ron stepped on his feet, and his figure disappeared again. The rest of the people couldn't sit still when they saw the situation. That guy escaped. Hurry up. Whoever catches it first, devil fruit will go to whom? Don't fight Lousy, believe it or not Lousy killed you all. Hee, come if you have the courage to see who kills whom. The surviving gang rushed out carrying weapons and guns. Seeing this scene, Mykelta was a little flustered, and hurriedly took out the phone worm and contacted Mr. Zero, which is Crocodile. What's wrong, President? Something is not good. After listening to Mykelta's report, Crocodile at the highest level of the Yuyan Casino was silent for a few seconds, and then spit out a smoke ring with a cold voice. Mykelta, go and notify Mr. 2, let him do it immediately and I will go. Take back the iron fruit. Learn. After turning off the phone worm, Crocodile squeezed the phone worm in his hand, with blue veins on his forehead, his face gloomy and dark. You dare to do anything wrong with me, who is looking for death. When the voice fell, his body turned into a cloud of quicksand, directly slamming the glass in front of him, floating towards the distance. Below the Yuyan Casino, Mr. Point 2 Bentham immediately led people to encircle the parties around the Yuyan after receiving Mykelta's notice. When the chiefs inside the casino rushed out, they saw their family members being besieged and killed by the people of the Baroque Work Agency, and instantly felt a chill in my heart, and I wanted to understand everything. And what followed was even greater anger. Baroque Job Club, I want you to die. They began to fight back frantically. The entire street below the Yuyan Casino was chaotic and gunshots continued for a while. Yudi City, near the outside of the city to the east. Ron carried Nico Robin, who had passed out in a coma, and fell here from the roof ridge in the distance. After he put Nico Robin aside, he let her lean against the corner of the wall. A cloud of sand drifted here from a distance, gathering human form in the clearing not far from him. Is that you? Took my iron fruit. Clarkdale, with his cigar, squinted at the dark-haired boy who was facing away from him not far away. After seeing the iron fruit in his hand, Crocodile secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not eaten. In this case, just grab it back. His right arm instantly deserted, turning into a rope of sand, quickly and silently stretched out towards the black-haired boy. But it caught nothing. What? Crocodile's eyes condensed. What a fast speed. Sand crocodile, Logia sand fruit-capable person. The mysterious black-haired boy in a white short-sleeved hooded sweater stood about 10 meters in front of him, with one hand in his sweater pocket, and the other hand holding the iron fruit of Paramesha, looking at Crocodile with a smile. So you are the boss behind the Baroque Job Club. Crocodile's eyes condensed, then narrowed. Ron, who felt his killing intent, didn't panic at all, looking at him with a smile. It can let you show your killing intent to me in an instant. It seems that this news is still quite valuable, at least for you. It seems that if this news is revealed, it should be terrible for your future plans. Shut up. Crocodile bit his cigar and couldn't help it. With a murderous wave, he used the ability of Logia sand fruit and attacked Ron. Sha-lan. A small sandstorm rushed out of Crocodile's palm and headed towards Ron, destroying all the masonry ground along the way. Tempest kick. Ron shook his foot. A cyan wind blade collided with this sandstorm, and the strong wind raged. Silently, Crocodile, who turned into sand, appeared beside Ron, and grabbed the devil fruit in his hand with both hands. Still caught a void. The black-haired boy flickered, disappeared in place, and appeared where Crocodile was just now. The positions of the two changed once. Crocodile's expression gradually became serious. Marine 6 styles shave. He stared at Ron and said, "Boy, who are you on Earth?" "My name is Ron, I'm just an ordinary traveler." Ron looked at him with a smile, then let go of his hand holding devil fruit, watching the iron fruit slowly sink into the water-like void beside him. Crocodile's eyes narrowed slightly. "It turns out that you are also a devil fruit person." Ron smiled, not refuting it. The king's treasure's abilities look like devil fruit's abilities in this world. After seeing his shave and devil fruit's ability, Crocodile became serious and regarded the black-haired boy in front of him as his real enemy. "I admit your strength, but if you want to challenge me, I still talk idiotically." Crocodile, who was biting his cigar, stared coldly at Ron. Strands of fine sand-like living creatures fluttered out of him. The black hair fur coat draped over his shoulders swung backwards, and the golden hook in his left hand was pointed. With a sharp cold light. Belonging to 7 warlords of the sea, the powerful aura of the king of the desert is completely released. Crocodile patted the ground with a palm. With him as the center, the ground with a radius of tens of meters cracked at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even rocks can be pulverized into yellow sand, and the yellow sand, which symbolizes death and dryness, sucks up the moisture of the creatures or objects it comes into contact with, and gradually spreads to the surroundings. The ground is like dead, turned into dry and cracked wasteland. Erosion reincarnation. The sand snakes gathered by the yellow sand formed by the sanding of more than a dozen rocks rushed out of the dry and cracked wasteland and attacked Ron from all around. Once touched by the yellow sand, the water in the body will be instantly absorbed. Ron knew this. He just wanted to shave and avoid, but the ground under his feet suddenly became sandy and collapsed, and strands of fine yellow sand wrapped around his legs. Ron's legs shook, and the strong wind instantly shook off the fine sand that had absorbed moisture in his body. At this time, the surrounding yellow sand had already rushed towards him from all directions. Even if he was shaving it, he couldn't hide it completely. Opened. Of course, the ground under the feet collapses at this time, and the physical technique of moving at high speed by stepping on the ground quickly cannot be used. Ron narrowed his eyes slightly, and reached out to grab the void. In Crocodile's wide-open eyes, the black-haired boy stretched out his hand and drew a long knife with thunder shining from the void. Water Breath Comprehensive Focus. 6 types. Reverse Uzumaki. Accompanied by the black-haired young man's sword swing. A twisted and huge water blue Uzumaki rushed out of his body. Uzumaki turned into a sharp and huge blade. While blocking all the yellow sand instantly, a series of spiral slashes like flowing water slashed towards Crocodile. Turns out to be Janao. Crocodile's eyes widened slightly, and his heart was shaken. When did such a young swordsman appear in the sea? At the moment, he didn't care about thinking too much. Immediately use the ability. Wall of Yellow Sand. A large amount of yellow sand suddenly rushed out of the cracked ground in front of him, turning into a very thick and solid wall of yellow sand, blocking those spiral slashes. When the wall of yellow sand turned into fine sand and scattered, the black-haired boy in the distance had disappeared in place. A sense of danger flashed in Crocodile's heart, which was immediately elementalized and turned into a stream of quicksand scattered around. Next second, the sharp light of the knife flashed in midair. It quickly passed under the dim moonlight, leaving behind a beautiful blue knife light. Diaresis, the breath of water, the 5 types. The kind rain in the dry sky. Crocodile's sandy body was cut diagonally apart by the gentle and kind blue knife light, turning into yellow sand and scattered on the ground. Ron held Reikiri in his hand and glanced sideways in one direction. Roads of yellow sand gathered there, condensed into Crocodile's tall body. He looked down at his left arm, where a wound was cut and blood dripped from it. Crocodile looked at Ron with a gloomy face. How did you do it? Even those with Logia fruit ability, as long as the speed of elementalization becomes slow, of course they will be slashed by Haki's slash. Ron looked down at Reikiri's clean blade, then glanced at him and smiled. As 7 warlords of the sea, don't you know it? Ron turned around and faced Crocodile with a gloomy and terrifying face. Compared to the thunder fruit-capable people I met before, your elementalization speed is really slow enough. Shut up. Crocodile was completely angry. Desert Sunflower. He touched the ground with his right hand, and the ground under Ron was completely deserted in an instant. But just before forming a dune that collapsed and flowed downwards and swallowed all life, Ron, who sensed the danger in advance, jumped into the air. Sand Twist. The yellow sand below turned into huge salons, rushing towards Ron in the air. Ron lifted the knife and volleyed. Several flying slashes that entangled armament Haki instantly chopped these salons into several segments, turning them into uncondensable yellow sand, scattered on the ground. Arc Moon Sand Dunes. Crocodile's sandy right arm waved towards Ron in the air, and the sandy arm became huge in the air, turning into a crescent-shaped sand blade and slashed towards Ron, who was in the air. As long as he is touched by his sand blade, he will be instantly sucked out of the body's water. Ron in the air didn't plan to avoid it. Ron, who fell from midair, took a breath, and the flowing blue water appeared on the sharp and clear knife of Reikiri in his hand, and it fell to the ground in a vertical split from high to bottom. The breath of water, the 8-shaped tacky pot. The violent slash that entangled Haki and the current directly smashed the huge sand blade, and the scattered yellow sand absorbed the water and fell to the ground. Immediately, Ron rushed towards Crocodile with Reikiri wrapped in blue water. It's like a blue water dragon swimming agile. The breath of water, the 10 forms of life and circulation. Crocodile gritted his teeth, stretched out his palm, and gave it a firm grip. Sand Burial. The earth shook suddenly. The dry and cracked ground on both sides of that water dragon was completely deserted, and the yellow sand rose apart like the sea, and was buried towards the water dragon in the middle. But when the yellow sand approached, it suddenly fell to the ground because it absorbed the moisture around the water dragon. Crocodile did not expect that his abilities would one day be restrained by sword moves. Looking at the majestic blue water dragon rushing towards him, his eyes were dark and gloomy. Now that you want to fight, let's try it. Desert Knife. Clopdal's intact left arm instantly turned into a blade of sand, and it slashed forward from top to bottom. The earth in front of him was instantly separated, and the huge and sharp sand blade faced the blue water dragon condensed by the sword. Kang! The yellow sand and the flowing water collided clearly. The violent air waves rushed in all directions, and nearby houses were either chopped up or corroded by sand. On the dry and cracked ground, half of the crocodile is completely deserted, and half of the black-haired teenager is quickly returning to life. When Nico Robin woke up, he saw such a scene. His own boss, Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, turned his hands on the sand blade, bit his cigar, and his face was gloomy and dignified and bumped into the mysterious black-haired boy who stunned himself and held a long knife at the moment. The 2 men were so strong and ferocious that the aura that was visible to the naked eye rose rapidly, and circles of violent shock waves continued to spread to the surroundings, raging winds raging, and yellow sand roaring. Even the well-informed Nicole Robin is a little confused at the moment. What the hell? What happened? Does the sand crocodile, one of the dignified 7 warlords of the sea, only have this kind of strength? Ron looked up at the much taller Crocodile in front of him and smiled, his expression relaxed and casual. Compared with the Shichibukai I played against, you seem to be better than Gecko Moria. Stop talking big, kid. Clarkdale's eyes narrowed slightly. In an instant, a stream of quicksand on the ground entangled towards Ron. At the same time, the golden hook mounted on Crocodile's other arm was glowing with cold, cut through the air, and fell ruthlessly towards him. The tip of the hook has a little purple, which is obviously very poisonous. Ya. Ron stepped on the hard ground under his feet, dodges the moment of the blow, and disappears in front of Crocodile. Next second, accompanied by the fierce wind, a powerful, extremely fast whip kick hit Crocodile heavily from the left side. Crocodile's tall body was instantly like a cannonball, and in Nico Robin's horrified gaze, he flew out quickly to the distance. After smashing several houses one after another from the open space on the edge of the east city of Udi City, they fell into the desert outside the city and slid out several tens of meters before stopping. How is this possible? Nicole Robin looked at the direction where Crocodile was kicked into the air, in disbelief. That's the king of the desert, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, the power of the fruit of Logia, Crocodile. Would be kicked out. She turned to look at the dark-haired boy who was standing where Crocodile had been, carrying a cold, clear long knife. Who is he? Under her gaze, the black-haired boy's free left hand peeked forward, and the palm of his hand seemed to disappear into the void. When he pulled it out again, there was a big wine gourd in his hand. He held the knife in one hand, and poured the wine gourd into his mouth in the other. Demon fruit power. Robin looked at him and couldn't help thinking. Is this guy a new pirate? Or a person trained by Marine's secret agency? What is his devil fruit ability? Is it related to space? Just when she was thinking about it, a young, or rather young, youthful voice rang in her ears. Nicole Robin. Nico Robin suddenly recovered, but the black-haired boy was no longer in front of him. She hurriedly turned her head and looked around. As soon as he turned his head, he immediately saw the mysterious young man who came to her and stood by her side at some unknown time, facing her in the opposite direction. A drop of cold sweat came out directly from Robin's forehead. Wait, he knows who I am. He came to arrest himself. Thinking of this, a biting chill suddenly rose from Robin's heart. Don't be nervous, Nico Robin, I have nothing wrong with you. When she was nervous and restless, the black-haired young man beside her turned to look at her. In the moonlight, the black-haired teenager looked at her with a smile on her delicate and young face. My name is Ron, and I'm a traveler who has just entered the sea. I am not interested in your bounty. I just happen to know something about you. Don't worry that I will hand you over to Marine. Robin was taken aback when he heard the words. Aren't you here to catch mine? Of course not. Then you arrested me to intimidate Crocodile. It's probably impossible. Our president is the kind of person who won't compromise because of the life and death of his subordinates. Nico Robin gradually calmed down. No, then why are you arresting me? Not to give it to Marine, and not to intimidate Crocodile. Is it good for you to arrest me? Robin was really puzzled. Ron, standing next to her, held Rakiri in one hand and poured the endless jug in the other. After taking a long sip, he smiled at Robin. If you say, I arrested you because I wanted you to be my partner. Nico Robin was taken aback when he heard the words. She just wanted to say something. Sudden. The earth shook. The movement came from the desert outside the city. Yeah, really annoying guy, wait until I solve that guy first, then I'll talk to you later. Ron said, letting go of the hand holding the endless jug, letting it sink into the void. Immediately stepped on the ground, and the violent wind blew Robin's long hair. In Robin's shocking eyes, that figure cut through the night sky at an extremely terrifying speed like an arrow from the string, towards the desert outside the city. Rush away. What a powerful strength, Robin murmured while looking at the east. Suddenly a thought flashed in her mind. Could it be that, can he really defeat Crocodile? Thinking of this, her heart was extremely shaken, and she took a pair of big long legs and ran towards that side immediately. When Robin ran out of UD City, at a glance, she saw the black-haired boy in the desert outside the city wearing a white short-sleeved sweater and holding a sword in one hand. And across from him, after Ron was hit hard, the crazy crocodile used the fruit ability to ultimate, forming a huge salon roll. The dry and silent mass of yellow sand whirled rapidly, turning into an extremely violent tornado and swept toward Ron. It's like a giant crocodile about to swallow everything. Even if Robin is far away, his bare skin can still be cut by the strong wind wrapped in yellow sand. It is conceivable how much lethality is at close range or even being hit from the front. This is the fruit of Logia's ability. When the ability reaches the ultimate, it is a genuine, natural disaster. Robin's voice trembled slightly. The huge salon scroll in front of me, I am afraid it can destroy half of Rain City. Can anyone really resist this destructive force? She cast her gaze on the black-haired boy holding a blade in the distance. Compared to the terrifying and huge salon scroll, he looked extremely small in the desert. But when he faced the huge salon scroll in front of him with a calm expression, he slowly raised the blade of the blue water in his hand. Moonlight, yellow sand, strong wind. The world seems to have calmed down. Nicole Robin was in a daze, as if to see a calm and peaceful blue water surface beneath the small, black-haired sword-wielding boy. The blue water surface the size of the wellhead flipped and expanded outwards, covering a radius of hundreds of meters in a blink of an eye, turning into a turbulent lake. Crocodile behind the salon roll, and Nicole Robin outside the battlefield are all standing on the turbulent lake. The sky is full of white clouds, and the lake is turbulent. There was no wind in the air, only the sound of the tumbling lake in my ears. What's this? Crocodile frowned as he watched the turbulent lake beneath him. Wasn't he still in the desert just now? Why is it here? Is it an illusion? Or, his fruit power? Tick. It seemed that a drop of water fell from a high altitude and landed on the undulating lake. The center of the lake calmed down instantly, a circle of ripples rippled, spreading from the center to the surroundings, and the whole lake instantly became calm as a mirror. The heart is like Shisui. The breath of water. Upanishad 11 type. A calm and young voice rang in the ears of Nico Robin and Crocodile. Nigh. Words fall. All visions disappeared. The world is quiet, the wind is light and the clouds are light. Nicole. Robin looked shocked at the huge salon that resembled a natural disaster, curled up in midair and stopped, and then began to collapse. The black-haired boy with a long knife appeared behind Crocodile at some unknown time. In front of the sand Crocodile was cut open, a huge wound extending from the left shoulder to the right waist at some unknown time, and a large amount of blood was gushing out. Cough. Crocodile opened his mouth and spit out a big mouthful of blood, his eyes shaking violently with disbelief. This guy, it turns out, actually, defeated me. Me, Crocodile, the sand crocodile, would lose to this kid. Do not make jokes. You, like the Thunder Fruit players I have played before, rely too much on fruit ability. Ron Yuguang glanced at him. If you only know that you rely solely on fruit ability, no matter how strong the fruit ability is, you will not be able to become a truly top powerhouse. Shut up, shut up. I haven't lost. No, you have already lost. Ron released his hand holding the hilt of Reikiri's knife, and Reikiri slowly sank into the void with the tip of the sword facing downward. He glanced at Crocodile. Iron fruit, it's mine. Finished. He turned and passed by Crocodile, soaked in the sand rain from the sky, and walked towards UD City. Give me. Stop. Cough. Crocodile, who had become blurred due to the loss of blood, couldn't support it anymore. After shaking his tall body, he fell to the side and fell into the yellow sand. The last picture that flashed in his mind before he fainted was Ron with his back facing him disappearing into the yellow sand, and the name. Traveler, Ron. Wait until Ron walks in front of Nicole Robin, who hasn't recovered yet. She just came back to her senses. When she looked at Ron again, there was a hint of shock and awe in her eyes. Ron looked at her and smiled. How about finding a tavern to chat? Robin glanced at the lifeless figure in the desert. Don't worry about him, his men have already rushed here. Ron, with his hands in the pockets of his sweater, walked past her. Nico Robin's eyes widened in an instant when he said lightly, "If your wish is to find historical truth, come with me. Tonight in the chaotic rainy city. And this small tavern in the alley that is only open at night is fairly quiet. Give me a cold beer." Ron sat at the counter and said to the boss. "Give." The boss quickly put a large glass of cold beer with ice and bubbles in front of him. As soon as Ron picked up the wine glass, the door of the tavern was opened. Robin, wearing a cowboy hat and a white fur coat, walked up to him and watched Ron straight to the point. "How much do you know about the historical text?" "Definitely no more than you." Ron glanced diagonally at her and smiled. The wine glass in his hand was poured into his mouth, his throat gurgled, and he drank the entire large glass of cold beer in one gulp. "Ha!" Ron put down the empty wine glass, his face was full of enjoyment and satisfaction. "Boss, have another drink." "Ha ha, the amount of drinks for the guests is really good, come here." While waiting for the boss to drink, Ron turned to look at Robin, who was standing next to her. She stared at him closely. Ron propped his arms on the counter, his cheeks in his hands, and smiled at her sideways. "Do you know who forged the steel that records the text of history?" Nico Robin was taken aback. She seems to have never thought about this question. "Who is it?" Ron patted the seat next to him. "Sit down and talk." Nico Robin took a deep look at him, then sat down next to him. At this time, the boss brought another cold beer to Ron. He saw Robin. He smiled and said, "This beautiful lady, do you need something to drink? Although my shop is small, the taste of drinks is not as good as on the street. Those big stores are bad." "No, okay, please feel free to call me if you need it." As the shop owner said, he walked to the other corner of the counter and wiped the cups without disturbing the man and woman. "Can you tell me now?" Robin looked at the black-haired boy beside him. Ron took a sip of beer, looked at her sideways and smiled. "In the second half of the Grand Line, in New World, there is a country called Wano-kuni. In this country, there is a tribe named Kazuki. The indestructible stone monument that records the text of history was cast by the ancestors of the Kazuki clan 800 years ago during the 100 years of disappearance." Nico Robin felt a little shocked as he listened to what the black-haired boy said. "Wano-kuni, the Kazuki family. Is this the origin of those steles?" Just as Robin digested the information, Ron said another word that surprised her. "The head of the Kazuki family has inherited the interpretation of ancient characters from generation to generation. But it's a pity that the last Kazuki patriarch fell away before he passed the interpretation to his son." Ron took a sip and glanced at Robin beside him. Now maybe only this person who inherited Ohara's legacy and will, who Marine called Ohara's demon, can interpret the text of history. "So you think that maybe only me, Olaha's ghost in the world, can interpret the text of history?" After Robin calmed down, he looked at Ron and asked, "That's why you want to make me a partner?" "It's the main reason." Ron put his cheek in his hand and looked at her with a smile. "I am like you, I am very curious about what happened in that blank 100-year history." Robin took a deep look at him, then lowered his head to think slightly. After thinking for a while, she looked at the black-haired boy next to her. "What you just said is everything you know about the text of history?" "Of course not." Ron took a sip, "but I can tell you the rest of the content after you agree to be my companion. This is the premise." Robin's brows tightened slightly, his eyes fixed on the mysterious boy named Ron in front of him, and he whispered, "Since you know everything about me, you should understand how dangerous it is to get involved with me, Marine." Ron looked at her with a serious face and smiled suddenly. "I'm not joking with you." Robin clenched his fists, a little annoyed. "I know." Ron looked at the beer glass with only ice cubes in front of him, and smiled. "It's just that for real travelers, sometimes, danger is a good flavoring agent during the journey, isn't it?" And I also believe that my strength is enough to protect a historian who just wants to understand the truth of history and realize his dream. So, as he said, he turned his head and raised the beer glass with only ice in his hand to Robin, and said with a smile, "Would you like to go with me? Let's find out the truth about the 100-year-old blank." Robin stared at the smiling black-haired boy in a daze, and his heart trembled slightly after a long absence. Saul's words before his death rang in her ears. The sea is very vast. Sooner or later you will meet a partner who is willing to protect you. If it's this person, can you really understand me? When Robin and Ron were silent together. The tavern is dark yellow, quiet and peaceful. Just when Ron was about to lift up the glass with free ice in his hand and ask the boss to have another glass, Robin in the seat beside him lowered his head and whispered, "If you don't mind accepting a dangerous, O'Hara's demon, on your boat, then please let me join your trip." There were constant gunfire on the streets of UD City, and many people from underground organizations and Baroque workshops fought together and fought fiercely. In a dim alley, Robin and Ron walked side by side. "I'm here at Alabasta to join the Baroque Work Agency and become Crocodile's subordinate. Everything is for the historical text of this country's legend. But until now, I still haven't touched the slightest news about the stone tablet. It is said that ancient weapon, where Pluton is located, is recorded on that stone tablet. This is what Crocodile wants to know, so I will work with him," Robin said as he walked. "That stone tablet should have been hidden somewhere by the royal family of Alabasta. I know where." Robin suddenly turned his head to look at him, eyes full of surprise. Ron smiled at her. "I said, I know more than you think." When the early morning arrives, the battle in UD City has also come to an end, a victory for the Baroque Work Club. After tonight, the Baroque Work Society will control the entire underground power of Alabasta. Of course, the premise of all this is whether Crocodile, who is a Baroque Work Agency Mr. Zero, can struggle to survive from a severely injured and dying situation. Inside a small hotel, Ron introduced Nico Robin to Canis. "This is the historian, Nicole Robin, our new partner on board." "Hello Robin, my name is Canis and I am from Sky Island." Canis, with a cloud fox on his shoulder, smiled and stretched out his hand to Robin. "Hello." Robin shook her hand. After the two women met, Ron took the Paramesha iron fruit from the system space and handed it to Canis. Canis took the devil fruit with a spiral pattern from his hand, looked at the devil fruit in his hand, and muttered, "This is devil fruit. This is the iron fruit of Paramesha. After 23, it has the ability to manipulate steel. The price is that it will become a duck and cannot touch the sea." Ron's voice rang in her ears. "Whether you want to eat or not is up to you to decide." Robin in a cowboy hat stood by, not disturbing the two of them. After Canis stared at devil fruit in her hand for a while, her eyes became firm. Ron found this precious devil fruit specially for her. She wants to respond to this expectation. She wants to become stronger and be able to help him instead of being a vase on the boat that has always been protected by him. That's not a partner, and it's not the adventure she wants. Canis with firm eyes opened his mouth and bit down at devil fruit in his hand. The strange and unpleasant taste spread in his mouth, and Canis resisted the urge to vomit and swallowed hard. Devil fruit only needs one bite. As the devil fruit remaining in her hand slowly disappeared, the Canis blonde braid with her eyes closed broke free, and her long, tough golden hair fluttered wanton. The Yunhu on her shoulder ran away in a panic, ran behind Ron's feet, and hid. Under the gaze of Ron and Nico Robin, strands of liquid steel, like flowing silver, emerged from the body of Canis, who was fluttering with blonde hair, twisting and twisting like a living thing. The steel appliances in the room also trembled, as if congratulating them on the birth of their queen. When Canis stopped dancing with his blonde hair, hanging down his waist, she opened her eyes flashed with a dark light, her aura became very shocking. She stretched out her right hand forward. Moment. All the steel appliances in the house are liquefied. There were also plumes of liquid, silver-like pitch-black steel in the air, all converging towards the palm of her hand. Looking at the ball of steel that is constantly twisting, changing and growing above the palm of her hand, Ron, who was standing on the side with his arms, smiled. There was a hint of shock in Robin's eyes. "This is the power to manipulate steel. although the development of fruit ability depends largely on the user. But before considering user differences, there are also certain strengths in the fruit ability of Paramesha. Like gravity fruit, shock fruit, lion fruit, etc., are the most powerful in terms of rules, and belong to the first class. This kind of fruit is hard to find, and its ability may even be stronger than Logia. However, the manipulation of material energy, such as golden fruit, magnetic fruit, etc., belongs to the second class. Rubber fruit, dice fruit, string fruit, etc., have certain characteristics and attack capabilities, but they are second in class and belong to the third class. Robin's flower fruit and the lighter lion fruit belong to the fourth class. They have weak attack capabilities and strong limitations, and they focus on assistance. And the iron fruit that Canis eats now belongs to the second class. Purely in terms of ability, it is much stronger than flower fruit. After Canis had eaten this iron fruit and became familiar with its abilities, the three of them left the rainy city together and headed for the capital of Alabasta, Albana. After leaving UD City, Ron asked the two women to go to the royal capital Albana first, and he quickly searched for them in the nearby desert. He wanted to try to find the ruins where Luffy and Zoro fell from the original. Except for the stone stele that records Pluton's history in Alabasta's burial memorial hall. There is also a piece buried in the pit of that mysterious site. Ron walked through the desert quickly, and finally found the big rock in the desert at noon. When he came under the big rock, Ron opened the transparent world and easily found the quicksand cave that led to the underground. Ron stepped directly into it. When he fell several tens of meters underground, he stepped heavily on the hard ground, the stones under his feet were shattered, the entire site was shaken, and quicksand flowed down from above. Sure enough, here, Ron looked at the historical stele in front of him, which was nearly half buried in the ground, with a smile on his face. System, scan. After putting the historical text stone into the system space, Ron directly used Moonwalk to leave this mysterious pit of unknown origin and hurried towards Albana. Wait till the evening twilight. He joined Robin and Canis in the city for an exchange agreed in Albana. The three enter the capital of Alabasta together. In a tavern, the three of them ate and rested while discussing their next plans. Next I will go to the palace to seize the stone monument that records the text of history. Canis, Robin, you are waiting for me outside. Ron said while eating the steak. Canis nodded. Robin, with a glass of juice in front of him, was surprised. Snatch the stele of the historical text. How do you bring such a heavy thing out of the palace? Ron didn't look up. Have you forgotten my abilities? Robin's face was dazed. If it is that kind of ability, it can indeed be done. After thinking for a while, Ron stretched out his hand to grab a big bag from the void, put it on the table, and said to the two women sitting opposite him, there are probably tens of millions of Baileys in it. You can buy some clothes and food later. And what you want to buy, Robin, if you can find a channel, you can get more ignition powder back. Learn. Robin nodded. After nightfall, the three moved separately. The 12th king of Alabasta, Nefertiti Cobra, is still very much loved by his son King Kun. The royal capital Albana is also a thriving, stable and prosperous scene. Even at night, there are bright lights everywhere, and the streets are patrolled and inspected by armored guards. Inside the palace, Cobra is dealing with government affairs. The door was gently pushed open, and a little girl with blue hair tied up in the ball, white skin, and a very delicate face, squeezed in through the open door in a light yellow princess dress. My father. Cobra raised his head and saw the little girl running towards him smiling. Vivi, what's the matter? Now 10-year-old Alabasta, Nefertiti Vivi, who is still an innocent and cute little girl, raised her head and opened her big round eyes, and said to Cobra sitting behind the table, it's too late, father is not yet rest. Haha, if you take a break before finishing your daily official duties, you can't be regarded as a competent Kun king. Cobra smiled at her, then lowered his head to deal with government affairs. Vivi, if there is nothing wrong, you can go back and rest first. When Vivi heard this, his big eyes rolled. Well, I see, father, you should rest soon. After she got out of the house, she immediately carried her skirt and ran in the corridor with strides. When she ran to the palace yard somewhere, she called out the Mount Karoo she had hidden here. Karoo, tonight, let's continue with the palace adventure of last night. Puff Loo. Okay, let's go, and head towards the west of the palace. Quote exclamation mark quote. Princess Vivi, who was riding on its back, stretched out her hand and pointed to the west. Puff Loo Puff Loo. Land Duck Karoo carried Princess Vivi towards the west of the palace. In front of the funeral hall on the west side of the palace, a dark shadow appeared in front of the palace guard who was guarding here. Before they could react, they were knocked to the ground silently. Who? The captain guarding here fell to the ground, struggling to see the person's appearance, but only seeing a blurred back, he fainted immediately. Ron, wearing a black long-sleeved windbreaker, opened the entrance of the funeral hall and stepped into it. Not a moment after he walked in, Princess Vivi riding Karoo came here. When she saw the guards who fell to the ground, her eyes widened slightly. A bad guy came into the palace. Vivi looked at the opening door, a little scared and a little excited. Karoo, how about we sneak in and take a look? Puff. Hey, don't be afraid, I am Princess Vivi, the deputy head of the Shasha group. It is my duty to fight bad guys and defend the palace. Vivi patted the head of the land duck Karoo, who was shaking his head vigorously, with a small hand, and said angrily, you are my mount partner, you are not allowed to be so timid. Now, just go and take a look, and you'll come out with a glance, aren't you running fast? Don't be afraid. Under her persuasion, land duck Karoo gradually bolted up and walked towards the gate. When stepping into the open door of the organ, everyone swallowed and walked down the stairs gently holding their breath. When came to the funeral hall, Vivi saw the figure in black standing in front of the stele from a distance, with his back facing them. Is he the bad guy? Vivi thought to himself. Immediately, she saw that the huge stone tablet in front of the man suddenly disappeared. Vivi couldn't help covering his mouth with his hand to avoid screaming. Hey, that big stele really disappeared. What is the problem? Did he do it? Is this a trick? Just when Vivi's little head was full of random thoughts, the man in the black trench coat had already turned around. It was beyond Vivi's expectation. The man turned out to be a black-haired teenager who looked not much older than himself, with gentle facial features and a calm expression. His gaze fell on Vivi and Lu Xingyakalu under her. Karoo looked at him. The animal's instinct to perceive danger was activated, and his body began to tremble with cold sweat. Then, without saying anything, he immediately propped Vivi's feet and ran backwards. Diaresis hello, Karoo, what's the matter with you? Vivi couldn't help clinging to its back in surprise. Puff Loo Puff Loo. Huh, you say it's scary. That person doesn't seem to be scary. Vivi couldn't help but turned his head and glanced, and then was surprised to find that the person had disappeared there for some time. Is it? Land Duck Karuto rushed out of the organ gate of the funeral hall with Vivi. Haven't waited for one person and one duck to catch his breath. A smiling young voice rang in the ears of Princess Vivi and Lu Xingyakalu. Good evening, Princess Alabasta, Princess Neferutali Vivi. Lu Xingyakalu shook his body and almost didn't shake Princess Vivi on his back. Vivi stared blankly in the direction of the sound source. I saw the black-haired teenager who was still in the funeral hall standing on the courtyard wall at this moment, with his hands in the pockets of the black windbreaker, looking at them with a smile. Under the bright moonlight, the boy stood high on the courtyard wall, his black windbreaker and black hair swayed gently, looking extremely mysterious. You know me? Princess Vivi looked at him and asked. No, this is the first meeting. You stunned the guard outside and took away the thing in the funeral sacrifice hall. Are you a bad guy? Vivi looked up at Ron who was standing on the courtyard wall. Whether I am a bad person, it should be up to you to judge. Ron looked down at Vivi who was riding on the back of Lu Xingduck and smiled. As for the stone stele, I did take it away. Then you are a thief, a bad guy. Vivi puffed his cheeks and shouted at him. That is obviously something from our house, why are you taking it away? Return the thing as soon as possible, or I will ask your father to send soldiers to arrest you. The land duck Karoo under her was trembling all over. If it can speak, it must make the little ancestor on its back say a few words less. Can't you run faster? Although it may not be able to run away. Hearing what Vivi really said that day, Ron smiled, your father can't help me. Nonsense, my father is the lord of a country. Vivi wanted to refute, without waiting for her to finish. The very mysterious black-haired teenager in a black trench coat interrupted her. Since I saw it tonight, for the sake of the stone tablet I took away, I'll give you some advice. First, don't believe Crocodile. Why? Princess Vivi was puzzled. He is the hero of our country. Don't ask me why, you will know later. What else does Vivi want to say? Ron turned around and said, the second piece of advice, if this country is in danger, you can tell Crocodile that the steel was taken by me. Third piece of advice, if you see a guy named Luffy in the future, tell him I will wait for him at New World. After speaking these 2 sentences, he stepped on his feet, and his figure instantly disappeared before the eyes of Vivi and Land Duck. Vivi was left with doubts in his heart, confused. Crocodile is the bad guy. The country is in danger. And, who is Luffy? And the biggest problem that appeared in her heart was, who on earth is that mysterious-looking guy? Ron returned to the appointment place. Canis has already bought food, drinks, and clothing. Robin, who was responsible for buying gunpowder, has not returned yet. After a while, several carriages of the Baroque workshop came here. Some people removed boxes of gunpowder from the carriage. Vice President, is this all right? Hey, that's it, you guys go back first. Yes, after the group of people left in the carriage. Robin, wearing a cowboy hat and a white fur coat, walked towards the 2 of them. It seems that my affairs have not been exposed yet. Here are all the gunpowder collected by the Baroque working group from the underground forces in the royal capital, a total of 13 boxes. Well done. Ron nodded, then walked the first 2 steps, reaching out to the gunpowder in front of him. System, scan and store. Okay. Although it was the system that included it in the system space, in the eyes of Robin and Canis, the gunpowder slowly sank into the void while Ron was using his abilities. After he repeated his old tricks and put all the piles of food, clothing, and alcohol into the system space, Robin couldn't help but exclaimed, it's a very convenient ability. What exactly is Devil Fruit's ability? Is it about devil fruit in space? Canis was also curious. Looking at the curious eyes of the 2 women, Ron thought for a while, and decided to speak up. Actually, this is not Devil Fruit's ability. I have never eaten devil fruit. Canis and Robin were taken aback when they heard the words. Not Devil Fruit's ability, so you can touch the sea. Robin was shocked. Ron nodded. Robin was stunned. She has never eaten devil fruit, but has special abilities that ordinary people don't have. She has never heard of such a thing. Captain, are you born with this? Canis asked curiously. Ron shook his head. No. This ability, well, is related to a special thing that I call a treasure. Treasure, Robin murmured. Ron's feet were a little bit, and the void of his body waved like the surface of water in front of the 2 women, like a void portal leading to another space. Its treasure is Chaldee Gate of Babylon, which can connect to a void space for storing dead objects. Ron raised his hand, and Reikiri's knife hilt emerged from the water-like void, and slowly fell into his hand as Canis and Ron watched. Ron hung the unsheathed Reikiri around his waist, and the vision around him gradually disappeared. This is my secret. Robin and Canis slowly came back to their senses. When they heard these words, the hearts of the 2 women moved slightly. Is this, completely treating them as trustworthy companions? Without waiting for the 2 women to think more, Ron's next sentence directly broke the touch that had just risen in the hearts of the 2 women. Of course, my secret is more than this one. Ah, ha. The 2 women looked at Ron with a dull expression. The secret is more than this. Could there be a bigger secret? Our captain, who the hell is? Facing the gazes of Nico, Robin and Canis, Ron hugged his arms and said solemnly, I just told you in advance, so that no matter what I will do in the future, you shouldn't be too surprised. Now that I have said all that should be said, let's go back and rest for one night, and leave tomorrow morning. Ron, wait a minute, the historical text stone. Robin called to Ron, who was walking towards the house. Ron turned his back to her and waved his hand. Don't worry, I got it, wait until the boat is on the boat. Let's take a rest tonight. Robin breathed a sigh of relief. At dawn the next morning, the 3 of them left the Alabasta capital together and headed for the Green City when they came. On the way, the relationship between Nico, Robin and Canis gradually became closer. Regarding the development of Canis's fruit ability, she also gave her many suggestions like Ron. In the 10 days of walking through the desert, Canis gradually developed 2 moves. The Wings of Steel and the Dance of Blades. Wings of Steel. Although Canis has wings behind her, they are only decorative objects, unable to move or fly, but by controlling the steel, a pair of steel wings can be formed behind her, and flying can be achieved by controlling the steel. And it can swing its steel wings in the air, and shoot a large number of sharp iron pieces downwards, like a rainstorm, with great power. The dance of blade is to control the steel to form several blades that change at will, linger around the body, control with the mind, offensive and defensive, and can achieve both close combat and short to medium range attacks. Now she can control only 3 blades freely, and they are all palm-sized, like a dagger, and the maximum speed is almost the same as that of a lead bullet. But in the future, as she further develops the iron and iron fruit, the number and size that can be controlled will inevitably increase in speed. After passing through the Green City, it didn't take long before I saw the Voyager docked on the inland coast. "That's our ship." Ron pointed to the ship and smiled at Robin. "Nice boat." Robin looked at the ship and praised. Changed his image, with his blonde hair hanging down on his waist, wrapped in a white robe, and looking more and more pure and beautiful like an angel, Canis couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the intact Voyager. During this time in the desert, she was most worried about this ship. "It's okay." The 3 of them approached the boat. Immediately there was movement on the surface of the water. More than a dozen small shadows rushed out of the water, blocking the front of the ship. It was the Kung Fu manatee Ron and the others encountered when they came here. The Kung Fu manatee headed by him looked at Ron clearly. Its small, vigilant eyes instantly gleamed, full of surprise and excitement. The little tail flicked to Ron's feet, hugging his calf and rubbing hard. Master, you are finally back. This is..." Robin looked at the Kung Fu manatee holding Ron's calf, and at Canis beside him. Canis smiled and told her the ins and outs of the whole thing. After Robin listened, he looked at Ron's back and hid his mouth and chuckled. He would actually accept a Kung Fu manatee as his disciple, and take him to sea with him. As expected, he is an unpredictable guy. Ron patted its head. "Yes, when I left, I did complete the task I gave you. Well, you will be my disciple from today. If you want, you can get on my boat and go to sea with me." "Well, yeah, great, I do." Listening to his words, this Kung Fu manatee was extremely excited, and almost appeared phantom when his tail fluttered. "Don't rush to be happy. If you abandon martial arts in the future, I will drive you out of the division." Guaranteed not. "Okay, from today, you will be called Shaoqi." Oh. The Kung Fu manatee looked at Ron shiningly in admiration. "Looks satisfied with the name. Let's go." Watching that person and Yi Kung Fu manatee fluently communicate with different populations and walk towards the boat, Robin and Canis smiled at each other and followed. The Voyager raised its sails, turned around, and slowly left the island. The Voyager with its sails broke through the waves and sailed on the vast blue sea. The sea breeze is blowing, and the sun is warm. With the small wings off his back, Canis, with his blonde hair, stood on the deck with sweat, carefully manipulating the 3 steel blades hanging outside to conduct attack and defense training. Not far from her, the Kung Fu manatee, named Shaoqi, wore a steel vest and tried hard to practice boxing, sweating profusely, but his small eyes were bright. Under a few small fruit trees at the corner of the deck, Yunhuzici had a great time playing with a ball of wool. Fairly spacious library. Robin looked at the 3 huge stone tablets in front of him, both shocked and pleasantly surprised, and more excited. "This is..." The first piece was found in the funeral hall of Alabasta, the second piece was found in a mysterious pit in the Alabasta Desert, and the third piece was found on Sky Island. Ron leaned on the chair beside him and smiled at her excited. "Would you like to try to interpret it?" Needless to say, the excited Nicole Robin already stepped forward and touched the first stone tablet with his hand. She stared at the ancient words for a long time, her pupils flickering slightly. Ron, who noticed the change in her mood, looked at her back and said, "It's ancient weapon Pluton recorded above, right?" Robin hummed. Then she turned to look at Ron. "It is recorded that Pluton is a super warship designed and built by the boatmen of the capital of 7 waters. It is extremely powerful. One shot is enough to destroy an island. It is the ultimate weapon that can destroy the world. Ron, if I can, I hope you can allow me to hide its location from you for the time being. Such a weapon really shouldn't appear on the ocean again." Listening to Robin's words and looking at her serious expression, Ron smiled. Yes, after all, I am not a guy who has the ambition to dominate the sea like Crocodile. This ultimate weapon is nothing for me. Listening to what he said, Robin couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, and a smile appeared on his face. She turned her head and continued to look at the second stone stele from a mysterious pit in the desert. The information in this stone tablet is rather fragmented, and some words are even Robin's first contact, and she can see them in the mist. Looking at the whole article, there are only a few terms that make her very concerned. The huge kingdom, 800 years ago, was destroyed. God's natural enemy. She turned her head to look at Ron, and told him all the information recorded in the stone tablet. Ron listened, his eyes narrowed slightly. The content recorded in this stone tablet is the same as the message revealed in the original work. 800 years ago, a huge kingdom on this sea was indeed destroyed, and the current world government was established on the ruins of that kingdom. In order to rule, the head of the world government erased all traces of that kingdom. The natural enemy of God should refer to the D family. Does the D family really have some relationship with that huge kingdom? It's a pity that there is too little information revealed on this stone tablet, and there is no way to know how the huge kingdom was destroyed. What kind of connection did the clan of D have with it? Why did the world government erase everything about that huge kingdom? Even he did not hesitate to create a blank 100 years in history. Robin opened Shikai to read the third historical stone tablet from Sky Island. The above is the location of the three ancient weapon, Poseidon. Ron knew this better than she knew. Poseidon is the mermaid princess who is located on the Fishmen Island 10,000 meters under the sea and has the ability to communicate with sea kings. A mermaid princess with the name Poseidon appeared in the blank 100 years of history, 800 years ago. In this generation, the princess of the Dragon Palace Kingdom, Shirahoshi, has awakened this ability. After reading the three stone tablets recording the text of history, Ron waved his hand and put all these three stone tablets into the system space. Robin, with black hair and shawl, stood by the window of the library with his chin pinched, thinking carefully about the contents recorded on the three stone tablets. The sunlight poured on her body through the window, and the solemn and unique scholarly temperament was instantly revealed. Robin, do you know how many pieces of these stone steles record the text of history? Ron sat on the chair and looked at her. Robin recovered from thinking and shook his head. Have no idea. Ron stretched out 3 fingers at her and said with a smile, there are almost 30 stone tablets on this ocean that record the text of history. These indestructible steles are divided into 2 types. One type is 4 pieces of red-colored road sign historical text that records Raftel's location information. The other type is 26 pieces of historical text that record a blank 100-year history, including 9 pieces of historical text that record important information. These 26 historical textual stone steles are put together to expose the blank 100-year-old article, and all mysteries will be solved from them. Robin's eyes widened. Without waiting for her to ask anything, Ron's next sentence shocked her even more. Ron leaned back on his chair, looking at the chandelier above his head, and said, and that one piece, Gordy. Roger, I'm afraid he has already delivered this piece together to his destination, Raftel. Are these all true? So what I want to know, the real history. Is it on that island? It should be. Robin was shocked inside. Raftel. The end of the Grand Line, the hiding place of One Piece, the dream island that all pirates yearn for. In that seat, does she also have her dreams? I know so much about the historical text, I hope it can be useful to you. Ron got up from the chair and walked past her. I will stay in the gravity room for a while. Pay attention to your surroundings and call me if there is a situation. I see. Gravity room. Under 15 times the gravity. Ron, wearing a heavy steel vest, was doing push-ups, sweating like rain, and blood in his body like a pump. System, open my properties panel. OK. Host, Ron. Age, 14. Blood value, 1689. Sun breathing method master degree 100%. Transparent world LV3. Kendo, the realm of slashing iron, Shaocheng. Weapon, 21 great knife Reikiri. Dakue Dao 21 gong black Dao Chushui. Permanent buff thousands of tempers no true meaning binding. Armament Hakil 5. Observation Hakil 4. Conquerors Hakil 0. Shaving, LV7. Moonwalk, LV6. Tempest Kick, LV7. Special Skills. Mechanical Grandmaster, Navigation Grandmaster, Language Grandmaster, Healing. Special Treasures. King's Treasure, Endless Jug. After 2 battles between Sky Island and Alabasta, Ron's kendo attainments have gone further, from his first entry into the realm of iron slashing to a small achievement in the realm of iron slashing, and his improvement is not that small. Regarding the blood value, the more difficult it is to increase the later. These 3 months, plus 2 battles, only increased Ron's vitality by more than 100 points. Now Ron has to exercise under 15 times the gravity for 2 days to increase his vitality. Armed color and observation hockey cannot be improved for the time being. Conqueror's hockey is nowhere near awakening. Ron now seems to have reached a bottleneck in terms of strength development. Before breaking through this bottleneck, it will no longer be able to have a substantial increase in strength like before. Call. Under 15 times the gravity, Ron, who was sweating like rain, kept his 2 fingers supporting his whole body, and exhaled for a long time, as if he was about to expel all the air in his lungs. He closed his eyes and felt hockey in his body, thinking about how to make hockey flow as much as he wanted. If Rayleigh can reach the 3rd stage of armament hockey, emission, he may be able to break the current bottleneck and raise his own strength to a level in all aspects. But it is difficult, especially when no one was teaching him. Ron couldn't even touch the shadow of emission now. The Voyager sailed on the Grand Line for another half-month. Within half a month, Robin got acquainted with life on the ship, and got along more and more naturally with Canis and Ron. After Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi got used to the steel vest with a weight of 10 kilograms, Ron replaced it with a 20-kilogram one, and began to blindfold it, letting Canis control the steel ball to attack it. On the one hand, it can train its perception. On the one hand, it can also strengthen Canis's control capabilities. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Robin was not idle on the boat either. She began to collect all kinds of information on the sea by delivering gulls. If her dream is at Raftel at the end of the Grand Line, she will inevitably collide with many forces and strong people. Knowing them in advance is also a very important job. This day, after experiencing a storm, the sky is clear and clear. Wearing sunglasses, 3-point white denim shorts, a hooded short-sleeved jacket, and a ponytail, Robin looks like he is on a beach vacation sitting on a deck chair, looking at the newspaper in his hand. Time to eat. Canis and Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, who always wears a thick steel vest, walked out of the room with a few plates of food and put them on the table in front of Robin. It smells good. Robin looked up. What's this? The blonde hair hanging down behind her back was tied down with a red belt, and Canis wearing an apron smiled at her with her eyes bent. Sky Island Special Flavor, Tropical Set Meal Series Seashell Baked Noodles, Mixed Rice with Sauce, Toast with Jam and Vegetable Soup. Ah, the Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi at Canis's feet echoed. It's so rich, Canis, it's been hard work. Robin smiled at Canis. You are welcome. Canis smirked at her. Robin put the newspaper in his hand aside, pushed his sunglasses on his forehead, and sat down at the table to enjoy the food. Yunhu Cece couldn't wait to jump on the chair. After setting up the bowls, chopsticks and forks, Canis turned to look over the room. Where is our captain? It looks like it's still in the machine room. It seems to say something to be made today. Robin thought. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi raised his hand. I'll call the master. After speaking, it hopped towards the mechanical room. It hasn't waited for it to get close to the iron door. The door opened. Ron walked out of it, dressed in overalls, with messy hair and a little dark and oily face. Master, I'm eating. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi rushed to his feet, raised his head, and yelled at him eagerly. Understood, Ron said, slacking around in the warm sunshine, and said to Robin and Canis on the deck below, you guys eat first, I'll take a shower. When he was going to the bathroom, he stopped. Correct. In the puzzled eyes of Robin and Canis, Ron took out a black bow tie from his pocket and bent over to put it around Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi's neck. Quote. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi tilted his head, a little puzzled. After Ron put it on, he flicked his forehead with his fingers. Snapped. It hurts, master, what are you doing? Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi rubbed his forehead with a short hand and asked in confusion. And what is said from its mouth is no longer such as, but pure human language. After it discovered this, it couldn't help but be taken aback. Crackling. The fork in Canis's hand fell to the ground. I heard you right, Xiaoqi, just spoken. She looked at Robin, the two women faced each other, and both could see the surprise in each other's eyes. Well, what is going on? Robin couldn't help but ask Ron. Ron scratched his head and slapped Hatch and said, "It's nothing, I just made it a translation tool, that's the black bow tie. Whatever it says from its mouth will be automatically converted into human understanding by the bow tie language, and then conveyed through artificially synthesized voices. It's more convenient, I won't tell you any more, I'll take a shower first." After Ron left, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi scratched his head, and looked at 23 to Canis and Robin on the deck a little confusedly. Could it be that, now except for Master Ron, Sister Canis and Robin can understand what I said? Canis and Robin nodded blankly. Here very clearly. A few days later, an island appeared in front of the sea. When the Voyager approached the island, encountered an attack by sea kings about the size of a warship and 100 meters in length. It stands to reason that there are more sea kings of this level in the Com Belt, and it is rare to encounter them here. At the moment when Sea Kings lifted its giant tail towards the Voyager, it fell. Ron on the deck flashed and appeared in midair. "Kick it out." The wind pressure that caused the air to stagnate suddenly stopped. In the next second, it exploded. The horrible wind pressure that gathered and collided turned into visible waves of air and rushed out all around, and the huge fishtail of the Sea Kings was kicked toward the surroundings. It rolled backwards, and then slapped heavily on the surface of the sea. The sea exploded. Ron, who was in the air, stretched out his hand and drew the black knife Chushui from the void, swiping the knife and slashed towards the sea. A huge crescent-like sword gas swept across the deck, and in the shocking eyes of Canis, Robin, and Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, it flashed and smashed into the sea like a falling black crescent. The sea surface of about 100 meters was cut open directly, and the seawater was drained to both sides. A straight line of blood appeared on Sea Kings under the sea. Puff! A large amount of heterochromatic blood spewed out, rendering the sea surface a strange color. After the seawater churned violently, there was no more movement, and it was calm again. "Master Ron, that's amazing." Xiaoqi's eyes gleamingly looked at Ron holding a black knife Chushui in the air, and his little tail flicked quickly. After Canis was shocked, there was also a trace of admiration and longing in the eyes of the black-haired boy. When can she become so strong? Robin was not so surprised. She had already seen Ron's strength as early as Alabasta. She was just a little confused. This kind of Sea Kings with a body length of 100 meters is considered to be a medium-sized Sea Kings, and generally only appears in the Com Belt. Why does it appear in this sea area? It's because of the island in front of it called Prehistoric Island. According to the system, Sea Kings can be roughly divided into small Sea Kings, with a body length of less than 100 meters, medium Sea Kings, with a body length of 100 to 500 meters, and large Sea Kings, with a body length of 500 to 1000 meters. Very large Sea Kings generally only exist in the deep sea, with a body length of more than 1 kilometer, and some can even reach the terrifying 5 kilometers. Compared to humans, these Sea Kings are the real Sea Kings. After solving the sudden Sea Kings, the Voyager successfully arrived at this prehistoric island known as Little Garden. When Ron set foot on this island, the voice of the system rang in his mind. "Drop. Check where the host is located. Prehistoric Island. It meets the sign-in conditions and can sign in. After the sign-in is successful, the system rewards will be obtained. Do you sign in?" "Sign in. Sign-in is completed. Get a sign-in reward. Blood value +10. Obtained the sign-in reward. Chi and blood skill. The ultimate meaning of power, currently LV1. Li Zi LV1. Chi and blood skills, after activation, consume blood and energy, power increases by 10%, no sequelae. After activation, it consumes blood and directly increases the strength by 10%. Ron was a little surprised by the reward. His power is already very strong now, if it is increased by 10%. He clenched his fist slightly, wanting to experience the increase in this strength. When he showed his vigor, the moment he had just activated this skill, a strong and hot bloody steam suddenly emitted from him. Robin and Canis couldn't help but step back a few steps because of the hot air blast from him. Robin pressed the hat on his head, looked at Ron in surprise and asked, "What's wrong, Master?" Walking ahead, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, wearing a steel vest and carrying a large package on his back, also turned to look at Ron. "Could it be that? Is it dangerous?" Canis and Robin heard the words, their expressions condensed, and they immediately became alert to their surroundings. "No." Ron suppressed the sudden increase in the amount of violence and the urge to vent this power. "I just wanted to find someone to fight." Canis and Robin breathed a sigh of relief when they heard this. Xiaoqi was excited when he heard the words. Is this the loneliness of not being able to find an opponent at the peak of martial arts? "You deserve to be a master." "No, don't give me random thoughts, Robin, don't show them your books." "Understood," several people said, walking towards the island. Soon, a huge tiger appeared in front of them. So big. Robin couldn't help being a little surprised. This is already 3 times the size of a normal tiger, right? Seeing that, tiger opened its mouth wide, and rushed towards a few people quickly. Yunhuzi hid in Canis's hat in fright. Ron was about to shoot. Canis was an eager step forward. "Let me try." As she lifted her right hand, 3 clusters of flowing and changing molten iron appeared all over her, which quickly condensed into a cold steel sharp cone. "Go with." The 3 sharp cones instantly turned into 3 black lights, cutting through the air and rushing towards the tiger. Accompanied by the sound of sharp weapons piercing tiger skin and skeletal muscles. The tiger was directly pierced from head to tail, and stopped in front of a few people. The huge body tilted and fell heavily to the side. 3 sharp cones flew to Canis again, spinning around her. "Sister, Canis is amazing." Xiaoqi joined in time. "I am getting more and more skilled." Robin patted her shoulder and smiled. "Well done." Ron also gave a rare compliment. Canis was a little embarrassed to be praised, lowered his head, scratched his hair, and smiled. Then continued to deepen toward this island. What appeared in front of a few people were either huge animals or some dinosaurs that logically should have disappeared in this world. These dinosaurs were probably not extinct because of the chaotic climate of the Grand Line and the special geographical environment of this island. The huge animals on this island, the huge marine creatures and sea kings in the nearby waters may all be due to this reason. Boom! A Tyrannosaurus Rex about 10 meters high fell heavily on the ground. Ron fell from the high tree branch to heli before he managed to kill the Tyrannosaurus Rex. At this time, he was already tired and collapsed on the ground. Canis, Robin and Xiaoqi were in front of the manatee. Is this not enough? Ha! Canis lay on the ground, gasping for breath. Robin was sitting on the grass, his chest rising and falling violently, his head sweating profusely. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi stood up tremblingly, and looked at Ron resolutely. I can still. The words are not over yet. Because of the steel vest it was wearing, it was unstable, upright, and fell face down. I made a decision. Ron hugged his arms and looked at the 2 people on the ground and the Kung Fu Manatee and said coldly, "From today, we will give you special training on this island. Find a place with a water source on prehistoric island as a base point." Ron clenched a fist and forcibly opened up a clearing in the mountains and forest, and then took a few people to build a wooden house here. When building a wooden house, Robin and Canis looked at the steaming volcanoes in the distance, the huge strange birds flying across the sky, and listened to the heavy footsteps passing by from time to time around them, and the roar of huge beasts from the distance. "I feel a little hairy in my heart. Do you really want to live here for special training?" Different from 2 women, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi was so excited that he kept spinning around Ron. Master Ron, what kind of special training do you need? You go get some prey and come back. This is also part of the special training, understand?" It rushed towards the forest. "Does it matter?" Robin asked Ron, who raised a giant wood with one hand. "What?" Ron turned his back to her and gently put down the heavy giant wood in his hand. "Let it go hunting alone, it seems quite dangerous on this island." "It's okay, I will rush over if there is danger." Ron's tone was casual and relaxed. His observation hockey has been opened, completely covering the island. It can be said that everything that happens on this island now is in his master. Including the 2 giant warriors, Dory and Brigitte, who have fought on this island for 100 years. It seems that the two of them have not yet started fighting, they are in a truce, each staying in their respective areas, recuperating, and waiting for the next battle horn to come. Soon, a 2-story wooden house was built, and Canis used the power of iron fruit to strengthen the wooden house. Master, is this prey okay? Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi also came back carrying a wild boar several times its size. Well, put it there, wait for me to deal with it. Ron, who was making a fire with Robin, turned his head and glanced. Oh, Xiaoqi put the wild boar stunned by it aside, and then sat down on the grass on the side. Are you tired? Canis smiled and walked to it. Here. She handed it a glass of water in her hand. Thank you, Sister Canis. Just when Xiaoqi reached out to take it, the ground suddenly shook and the water cup fell to the ground. What's wrong? It raised its head. I saw Canis in front of him looking at the sky above the forest. His expression was full of horror and horror. Just when Xiaoqi looked up, the sky was suddenly shrouded in shadows, and a huge human face appeared above the forest in front. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi took a breath and fell backwards, almost frightened. Robin looked at the tall giant like a mountain. His expression could not be kept calm, cold sweat bursting out of his forehead. That is, the giants. The giant saw the people below, a surprise flashed in his eyes, leaned over and grinned at the people, and said, Allah, it turns out that it is a guest from outside. I said, why is there smoke here? Ron recognized him. New World Giants Land, the warrior of Elbaf Warrior Village, the Red Ghost Brigitte. Are you having a party? Can I attend? Brigitte opened his eyes wide, and grinned as he looked down at the others. Xiaoqi and Yunhu Cece were so scared that they couldn't speak. Canis also couldn't calm down at all, his face was white. Robin, with cold sweat on his forehead, turned to look at Ron. Ron looked at him and said, it's okay to go to the banquet, but I don't have enough meat here. Go get some more meat. To agree to it. Canis and Xiaoqi opened their eyes and looked at him, dumbfounded. I see, is dinosaur meat all right? Brigitte, who didn't seem very smart, asked Ron. As if afraid that he would disagree, he added. The dinosaur meat is delicious, with a large amount, and it's full. Ron nodded. The Red Ghost Brigitte grinned suddenly. Haha, then I'll come right away. He strode out of here to catch those dinosaurs that looked like chickens and geese in front of him. Robin looked at Ron and said, is it really okay? No problem, that guy is not malicious. Ron smiled. Hearing what he said, Robin was relieved slightly. Soon, Brigitte returned here with a large piece of dinosaur meat. Canis still felt a little embarrassed, using the fruit ability to create a huge barbecue grill. After placing a large amount of wood and charcoal fire below, the barbecue began. While waiting for the meat to be cooked, Brigitte sat next to him and started a conversation with Ron. From the conversation, Robin and Canis learned about this giant's name and why it appeared here, and what happened to another giant besides him. Diaresis for the honor and dignity of the fighters, a long duel that lasts for a long time. Why do you want to do this? Robin and Canis couldn't understand. But Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi was bursting with tears and blood. This is a man, is this a powerful warrior of the sea? Master, I, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, I will become such an indomitable warrior in the future. Wah ha ha ha. Brigitte leaned down and grinned at the Kung Fu Manatee who was not as big as his eyes. Small, can you also understand the dignity of a soldier? Wow ha ha ha, as expected, the great god of war, Al Prabhu's will is everywhere. Ron took out the endless flask from the king's treasure, took a big sip, looked at him and said, Brigitte, why did you and the giant named Dory start a duel? For what? I have forgotten it a long time ago. Brigitte shook his head. That kind of thing doesn't matter at all. As he said, his huge nostrils moved, and he looked at Ron with excitement. Are you drinking? What's the matter? Ron nodded. Well, can you give me a drink too? I haven't drunk alcohol for years. I can trade dinosaur meat for you. Brigitte asked greedily. Really? Yes, you don't need dinosaur meat, just treat you as I invite you, just a little drink. Ron nodded, stand up and said, really, are you good? Brigitte was pleasantly surprised, you are really a good person. Robin looked at Ron and said, but how do you invite him to drink? There seems to be no utensils for him. Simple, Ron said, his figure flashed, and he appeared on top of Brigi's head with the endless jug. "Come on, big man, raise your head and open your mouth, I will pour the wine into your mouth." Brigi rushed under. Ron said, "Ah, when did it run over my head, so fast?" Brigi then reacted, quite surprised at Ron's speed. But he still didn't think much about it, and obediently lifted his head and opened his mouth, without the slightest warning or suspicion for Ron. Ron just stood on his head, holding the endless jug and pouring it into his wide-open mouth. The huge amount of wine in the endless jug poured into his mouth without money. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes. In the end, the giant warrior, the red ghost Brigi, got drunk for the first time in a century. After this day, Brigi got acquainted with Ron and others. Knowing that Ron and others will stay here for a while, he is not to mention how happy he is. Every day, he will cut off some of the best meat from the captured dinosaurs and send them over. Ron's special training for Canis, Robin, and Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi also officially started. Canis and Robin's special training fruit ability and actual combat. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi is specially trained and much more, including basic strength, speed, physical strength, ability to be beaten, perception ability, and vitality. The so-called training vitality is to throw it into a group of Tyrannosaurus Rex, let it desperately to survive, so as to stimulate a deeper potential, that is, vitality. Apart from training them, Ron is also familiar with the master's chi and blood skill, the ultimate meaning of strength. The principle of this skill seems to be to burn the blood of the whole body, turning it into pure power. The duration is also related to the total amount of chi and blood. With Ron's current vitality, it can be activated for almost 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, when his energy and blood were exhausted, it would be difficult for him to maintain a fighting state. But at the same time, once Ron's breath of the sun reaches the consummation realm, he can quickly restore his physical strength and blood. So for Ron, when this skill is activated, it can last more than 10 minutes. Soon, 10 days passed. On this day, the volcanoes on this island caused small-scale eruptions, which was also a signal of a duel between Dory and Brigi. Brigi, who was drinking with Ron, had a sudden change in his eyes when he heard the signal, grabbed the huge axe next to him, and stood up. "Ron, go back to the bar and drink together, I should go to a duel with that guy." He carried the huge axe, took a big step, and walked over there. The battle between Blue Ogre Dory and the Red Ghost Brigi begins. The entire island was shaken by the battle between the two. As it started, Robin and Canis, who were developing special training fruit ability, looked up. The duel of the two giant warriors. When Dory and Brigi's huge weapons were wrapped in huge force and collided together. The loud sound spreads around along with the shock wave. Rush out of this island and spread out towards the sea in circles. The sea outside of Prehistoric Island, also known as Little Garden, instantly set off huge winds and waves. Ron stood at the highest point of the island, watching the duel between the two giants not far away. There are no moves at all, it's just a match of strength. Open and close, pure and incomparable. The two of them looked directly at each other with fighting spirit in their eyes, and every blow they swiped at each other contained their full strength. In order to win the battle, go all out. This kind of duel is really something exciting. Standing on a high place, Ron, with black hair and flying, clenched his fists, his eyes were fiery intent to fight, and his strength in his body was eager to try. He wanted to join the battle between the two giants at this moment, and simply clash with them with strength. But he also didn't want to destroy the sacred duel between the two. Ron sat down at the highest point, stretched out his hand to take out the endless jug from the void, and poured a few big mouthfuls into his mouth, before forcibly suppressing the feeling of boiling in his heart. Behind him are several active volcanoes boiling and smoking. In front are two giant warriors fighting in a duel. This kind of scenery, even in this vast sea, should be very rare. Ron held the endless jug in his hand and drank the wine while watching the magnificent showdown in front of him. Soon the afternoon passed in a blink of an eye. At dusk, the setting sun is sinking. The whole island, resembling ancient times, is covered with a layer of dusky clouds. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi dragged a prey and returned to the stronghold with bruises. After Robin and Cornus finished their day of special training, they started to light a fire and prepared dinner for the evening. At dusk, the two giants Dory and Brigi were still fighting. Ron was lying on the top of the highest mountain with his eyes closed, the wind blowing on his smiling cheeks. Enron and comfortable. The battle between Dory and Brigitte lasted for 3 days. It is still a tie. After both of them went home, Ron, who played moonwalk, appeared in the air in front of Brigitte. Brigitte, if you can you also try it with me? Ron, is Brigitte looking at him? He was surprised when he heard the words. Duel with you. He burst into laughter. Wow, ha ha ha, stop joking, you can't catch me with such a small body. I don't think so. Ron smiled at him. Next second, a fiery, violent bloody steam was released from him, his head full of black hair rose into the sky, blood boiled. Accompanied by the light of blood, his figure flashed and appeared in front of Brigitte, wrapped in strong vigor, and gathered an astonishing punch to hit the huge shield in his hand. Boom! An extremely dull voice sounded, and then an astonishing force surged along the shield to Brigitte's arm, pushing his huge body back 2 steps back. This. Brigitte's eyes widened in surprise. How? Enough to practice with you, right? Ron, with flying black hair and full of bloody steam, stood in midair and smiled at him. Brigitte stared at him, grinning suddenly. Interesting. Then try it. Don't blame me if you die. He raised the huge axe in his hand and cut it directly down. The air was chopped by that huge force and turned into visible waves of air and rolled back on both sides. Armed color hardened. Ron's fists became pitch black as steel, and he fisted against the huge axe that had fallen. Boom! The vigor overflowed, the air roared, and the earth shook. Outside the wood cabin. Are you fighting again? Canis, who was exercising fruit ability, heard the movement and said helplessly. Robin chuckled. Sure enough, the warriors of the giant race are as good as the rumors. Boom boom boom. The roar in the air continued. The giant on the other side of the island, Blue Ogre Dory, was a little surprised. What happened? Didn't the battle stop? Why did that guy Brigitte make such a big move again? He walked over there curiously. When approaching there, at a glance, he saw Brigitte, holding a huge shield and axe, fighting an outsider with his bare hands. This is. Dory was a little surprised. Then he saw the young man with dark hair wagging and radiating hot bloody steam, with his pitch-black fist, hitting Brigitte's huge axe. Boom! The black-haired boy was directly smashed to the ground, and the ground instantly collapsed. And Brigitte's huge figure was also beaten back by a step or 2. Dory's eyes narrowed when he saw this scene. He knows the power of Brigitte very well. And that foreign little guy can actually repel Brigitte. The earth shook. An extremely fast blood beam shot up into the sky from the broken ground. The unscathed black-haired boy hit Brigitte's shield again. The tremendous force made Brigitte back again a few steps. Looking at the 2 people who had a huge disparity in body size, they slammed into each other firmly every time they attacked. A strong look of shock appeared in Dory's eyes. I was able to fight with Brigitte purely with strength back and forth. What an amazing physical quality. Who is that outsider? Is there any giant blood in his body? Ron and Brigitte fought each other for 10 minutes. Ron's clothes were beaten and torn, and there were some wounds and minor fractures on his body. Brigitte panted, his hands holding the axe and shield were a bit numb and stiff. In addition to shock, there was a hint of warfare and respect for the strong in his eyes when he looked at Ron. From the duel just now, he could feel Ron's strength. Call here today, Brigitte, thank you. Ron stood on the ground, raised his head and smiled at Brigitte. I'll buy you a drink later. Brigitte grinned. Wow, ha ha ha, that's great. Brigitte. Dory's loud voice rang in his ears. Brigitte turned his head and saw Dory standing not far away. His eyes condensed and said, Dory, what are you doing? How could I not come to see such a big movement? It has nothing to do with you. I didn't want to find you either. Dory didn't bother to pay attention to him. He looked at Ron on the broken ground below and said, what a good duel, foreign guest, I am a giant warrior from Elbaf, Blue Ogre Dory, can you tell me your name? Quote. Ron raised his head and smiled at him. Ron, it's a traveler from outside. Ron, I remembered it. Dory nodded, and asked Ron with a hint of war in his eyes. Ron, do you have time tomorrow? Can you compete with me? Yeah, Ron nodded at him without thinking. Dory, you guy. Brigitte gritted his teeth and stared at him. It's fairer to play 1 game per person. You've already tried 1 game, and you should be satisfied. Dory glanced at him, then looked at Ron and said, I prepared a delicious dinosaur barbecue. Let's eat together. No, no, my companion has already cooked the food. Really? Then I'll go back first, and I'll be waiting for you over there tomorrow morning. Ron returned to the cabin. When Connus and Robin saw Ron, who was in tatters and wounded, they were all taken aback. In the end, what happened? Can I get you out of this? Is there a strong monster on this island? Ron scratched his head and told the two women what happened. Connus stared at Ron blankly. The one who fought Brigitte just now, was the captain you? Ron nodded. Robin was a little speechless. You really like to mess around, and you go to a duel with giant warriors. No wonder it hurts like this. Wait, I'll get some medicine. Ron grabbed Robin, who was going upstairs to get the medicine, and smiled at her. No, this little injury will heal all night. Chapter 71. The next day, Ron went to Dory's side again and had another fight with him. Hardy. The third day, Ron and Brigitte duel again. The fourth day, duel with Dory. The fifth day, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi and Robin, Connus are busy with special training, exercising. Ron was also busy fighting against two giant warriors with pure strength. In this kind of fierce battle that is evenly matched and simply fighting each other with strength, the huge blood in Ron's body rushes through his physique frantically, making his physical fitness once again improve at an extremely fast speed. Soon, 4 months passed. Ron's blood value reached 1800 points, not to mention physical speed and defensive ability, and his single-arm strength exceeded 30,000 kilograms. Chi and blood skill, the ultimate meaning of strength, reaching LV2. Increased strength after activation, 20%. 4 months of special training. Let Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi's physical fitness rapidly improve, his vitality is extremely strong, and under the guidance of Ron, he successfully mastered the Shave and Tempest Kick in Marine 6 styles. Armament Hockey gradually touched the shadow, Observation Hockey is far away. It is now strong enough to defeat a 6 or 7 meter high Tyrannosaurus alone. Robin further developed the ability of Flower Fruit, and his arms reached 80 pairs. Connus has made the most progress. With the moves developed by her Iron Fruit, the Blade of the Dance of Blade has reached 7 from the previous 3, and the speed has more than doubled, and the control is more flexible and casual. The ability to control steel has also increased from the original 10-meter area to 60 meters. All the steel within a radius of 60 meters can be controlled by her. But it is very exhausting. After checking the results of the 2 men and 1 manatee, Ron nodded and said, "It's almost time to leave." "Are you finally leaving here?" Connus and Robin breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, after bidding farewell to Dory and Brigitte, Ron and the others took the boat and headed towards the ocean along the river. When I left the estuary, the sea in front of me suddenly churned up. "What's wrong?" Robin held the cowboy hat on his head. Connus looked intently, and then his eyes widened suddenly. "What's that?" Seeing the island-eating goldfish, which was as big as an island, popped out of the sea and opened its mouth wide to the ship, Connus and Robin and Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi were all shocked. "What is this? It's over, it's going to be eaten by monsters." Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi was frightened. What, Captain?" Connus looked at Ron in panic. I haven't waited for Ron to say anything. A loud voice rang in the ears of several people. "This is the eating island goldfish. The fleet that left this island before was eaten by this guy." Several people on the boat turned to look. I saw the giants Dory and Brigitte standing on the coast on both sides of the estuary, wearing huge gray cloaks and holding weapons. Dory glanced at Brigitte and said, "For the face of my friend, Ron, I will reluctantly join forces with you once. Don't hold back." "Wow, ha ha ha, I should say this sentence." Brigitte laughed. He looked at Robin and others on the ship and grinned. "Wait for you to just drive forward, we'll help you clear the way." Just as Robin wanted to thank him, Ron's voice rang in his ears. "Thank you, but, no trouble. Talking." Swish. Ron instantly disappeared on the ship's deck and appeared above the sea in front of him, facing the huge goldfish's open mouth, full of hot and powerful bloody steam, and the whole body rolled outwards. He did not know when he had an extra black sword entwined with a strong crimson sword. "A moment hockey, hardened," Ron whispered. "Hum." A purple-black light flashed on the black knife autumn water, and the whole long knife became sharper and harder, and the whole body seemed to flash with purple-black knife lights, cutting the air away. in the shocked eyes of Dory and Brigitte. Standing in the air, Ron raised the black sword Chushui in his hand, and a powerful sword power belonging to the sword tyrant rose into the sky. A gust of wind was blowing around him. The sword had not fallen yet, but the sea below had been separated. The breath of flame, profound meaning, purgatory. Accompanied by Ron slashed down. The sea in front of the ship was cut open directly. A jet black huge flying slash engulfed the hot crimson karma fire, across the sea, and past everything from the huge goldfish. In Brigitte, Dory, Robin and Canis, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi's shocking eyes. The huge goldfish was divided into two in the middle. The two huge halves smashed into the separated sea, and huge waves were set off in the sea. Under the beating of the waves, the Voyager quickly drove forward. Dory, Brigitte, goodbye. After Ron, holding a black knife Chushui, exhaled, he stood in the air and waved his hands to the two giants looking behind him with a smile, and then stepped on the moonwalk, catching up with the ship heading far away like an arrow from the string. The ship disappeared from sight in a short while. Dory and Brigitte came to their senses only then. The two looked at each other, both with wry smiles. It seems that we don't need help at all. That guy Ron actually hides such a strong ability. It's that we can't force his full strength. This guy is really a monster. The two shook their heads and walked back. By the way, did the slash just now carry a trace of Conqueror's breath? Is there? I don't seem to feel it. But if it's Ron, it's nothing strange to awaken Conqueror's haki, right? That said, after all, it is a monster that can compete with giant warriors. After leaving Prehistoric Island, it didn't take long to arrive at Red Line. Crossing the Red Line, Ron and his team came to East Blue. Within East Blue, the weakest in the world, there are very few pirate groups with a bounty of more than 30 million. All the pirate boats encountered on the road are left to Canis, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi and Robin to deal with. Ron didn't interfere. When you arrive at the island where the Loguetown, known as the beginning and ending town, is located near the entrance of the Grand Line. Canis has defeated 5 pirates who want to go to the Grand Line in a row. The highest bounty is only a 17 million Pele Zone fruit-capable person, which was easily defeated by Canis. Loguetown. The moment Ron stepped here, the system prompt sounded in my mind immediately. Drop. Check where the host is, Loguetown, and meet the sign-in conditions. If you sign in successfully, you can get sign-in rewards. Do you sign in? Sign in. Ron didn't hesitate. Sign in is successful, get a sign-in reward, blood value plus 10. Get the sign-in reward, Conqueror's Haki. Current Conqueror's Haki, LV1. Ron, who felt the strange power in his body, was full of excitement and surprise in his eyes. The reward turned out to be Conqueror's Haki. In this way, Conqueror's Haki is finally complete. What's wrong? Robin, who noticed the change in his expression, looked at him. No, nothing. I just thought of something interesting. The smiles on Ron's face were hard to hide. Is it? Robin doesn't doubt the others. Robin, come and see, this thing is so interesting. Canis, already attracted by the bustling streets and shops of Loguetown, waved to Robin and shouted. Robin was attracted over. Ron, who is in a good mood, also took Xiaoqi around. The black-haired teenager with a beautiful and harmless appearance, but with a black knife hanging around his waist, carried a strange animal in a steel vest. This strange combination aroused the curiosity of many people's eyes and turning heads on the street. A sneaky guy saw the long knife on the black-haired boy's waist, and a flash of light flashed in his eyes. That knife should be a valuable thing. He said to the younger brother beside him, "You are watching here, I will tell the captain." Learn. After a while, a group of people blocked Ron and Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi in a small laneway. The man in the lead wore the cap of a pirate captain, and pointed a gun at Ron with a grinning smile. "Boy, hand over the knife in your waist. Lousy is in a good mood and can spare you." "Master, can I take action?" Xiaoqi said to Ron excitedly. Seeing it uttering words, it really shocked the people of this little pirate group. Where did the monster come out? It can speak human words. Ron glanced outside the alley and smiled at Xiaoqi. "You seem to have no chance to shoot." Xiaoqi hasn't reacted yet. A fist that looked like a cannonball rushed into this alley with white smoke, and directly knocked the pirate leader out with a single punch. The pirate leader hit the wall hard, his cheeks collapsed, his eyes turned white and he passed out. Ship, Captain. A bunch of rubbish. You want to go to the Grand Line as much as you guys. Go to the jail and squat for me. A cold man's voice came from the smoke. Well, is this? A group of pirates holding weapons looked at the cloud of smoke that gradually condensed into a human form, with a frightened expression. When the cloud of smoke condensed into a smoker with a cigar in his mouth, no one among the pirates shouted, "It's the White Hunter, run away." A group of mobs of pirates immediately fled in panic. Want to escape? Smoker sneered with his cigar in his coat of justice and blasted his fist against the group of pirates like a cannonball. After a while, all members were knocked to the ground, and none of them could escape. The footsteps outside the alley approached, and then a group of Marines gathered. The leading Marine saluted Smoker. Smoker Lieutenant Junior grade. It's just right, take these guys away. Smoker spit out smoke. Yes. When Marine took the pirates away, Smoker bit his cigar and said to the dark-haired boy who somehow felt familiar, "Be careful from now on and stay away from these pirates." After speaking, he glanced at the kung fu manatee Xiao Qi at Ron's feet, and he wanted to turn around and leave. And just as he turned to walk out of the lane, a smiling teenage voice rang in his ears. "Don't you recognize me, Smoker?" Smoker's eyes opened slightly. This voice. He turned his head to look, his eyes fixed on the smiling black-haired boy with a black knife on his waist. Smoker's eyes widened when the delicate and clean eyebrows coincided with those of a black-haired teenager in memory. "Is that you?" Robin and Connus were a little surprised to see Xiao Qi returning alone. "Where is the captain? The master seems to have met someone we know, so let us go to the execution platform first, and he will come and join us later." Xiao Qi scratched his head and said, "Is that so?" Connus nodded. Inside a pub on the street in Loguetown, Smoker and Ron sat in the seats in front of the counter. "I didn't expect you to leave Marine headquarters." Smoker drank the wine in his glass, and glanced at the handsome boy who seemed harmless to humans and animals beside him. "Marshall and they are willing to let you go. 3 years ago, when this guy was 11 years old, he defeated himself who was the strongest freshman in Marine Academy at the time. Compared with himself who ate Logia devil fruit, this guy is the real monster. Smoker now knows this very well. After I showed my firm desire to leave Marine headquarters, they didn't want to let me go, but there was nothing they could do." Ron smiled at Smoker next to him. "After all, this is a long-term agreement." Indeed, Marine can't keep a person who doesn't care about Marine unless he is wiped out. And Marine, who is on the side of justice, cannot treat an ordinary person who has never committed a crime in this way. Ron nodded and smiled. "That's it." Smoker glanced at Ron beside him and said, "When you proposed to join Marine as an intern, did you plan to leave?" Ron didn't hide it either, and nodded. For him, becoming a Marine intern is really just a step towards becoming a strong player. "Why?" Smoker didn't understand. "If a guy like you joins Marine, he will be able to catch more criminals, reach a higher level, and better maintain order in this sea. Compared to your freedom alone, do you think it is better to let the evil on this sea grow wantonly?" He didn't understand the reason why Ron became stronger. Ron looked at the sparkling wine in his hand, and said in a calm tone, "Smoker, do you think it takes many reasons to become stronger? Just to live freely, this one reason is enough. Becoming Marine, even if you become Marine Admiral or even Marshal, don't still have to obey the orders of the world government." Ron's gaze squinted at Smoker. "If the world government orders you to destroy this town, would you agree to it? Or would you violate it?" Smoker was speechless, because he doesn't know the answer to this question now. There was a long silence between the two. After taking a sip of wine, Ron looked slightly relaxed, looked at him and asked with a smile, "After a fight with you, I didn't seem to see you at Marine headquarters. Later I asked Vice Admiral about flying squirrels. I realized that you petitioned and transferred, but I didn't expect to be transferred to East Blue." Smoker was speechless. At the beginning he thought that the guy Hina knew that he was seriously injured by Ron, and would definitely take this out and laugh at him at Marine headquarters, so he applied for transfer. Unexpectedly, the guy Hina didn't seem to know this at all. There is no sign of this incident in Marine headquarters, and no one remembers it now. Except Smoker himself. Gudong Gudong. Smoker, who was aggrieved in his heart, took a few sips of sullen wine and turned to Ron and said, "Then what are you going to do when you leave Marine? Aren't you going to be a pirate?" Not good. Ron looked at the ice cubes in the wine glass, rubbing his fingers along the glass. Smoker's expression suddenly became serious. Hey, boy, you can't be kidding about this kind of thing. If you are a pirate, the headquarters will definitely not let you go. I'm afraid there will be Garp Vice Admiral or Admiral immediately. Kind of Marine's highest combat power to capture you and imprison you into impel down. Haha, that's really scary. Ron smiled and turned to look at Smoker with a serious face beside him. Don't worry, I am still an ordinary adventurer who has not committed any crime. As for whether there will be a reward from Marine in the future, I can't say that. Anyway, it's all about the future. Ron took a sip of his drink and said casually. Smoker stared at him without speaking. After drinking the wine in the glass, Ron dropped a bag of Bailey, got up and said to Smoker. See you later. If you see Hina and Momoshiki, wait for me to say hello to them. When he turned around and was about to leave, Smoker, who was sitting at the counter with his back facing him, said, If you become a pirate in the future, I will definitely be one of the Marines who captured you. It's up to you, you won't be my opponent anyway. Ron smiled, pushed open the door of the tavern, and walked out. Smoker couldn't help clenching his fists after he left. This guy. How strong is he now? Before I fight, it makes me feel like I can't win. Compared to 3 years ago, is he stronger again? Ron came to the execution stand and joined Robin Connis and others. After visiting the execution stand of Roger, the one pirate king, a few people are ready to leave this town and go to the next island. Before Ron left here, he noticed a young fool with green hair, fangs and nose studs in the crowd. It should be Bartolomeo when he was young, an avid fan of Luffy in the original book. However, he does not seem to have the ability to shield fruit yet. Barrier fruit. Ron's eyes flashed slightly. It's not bad if you can get it. However, the chance is very small. After all, he doesn't know when and where Bartolomeo got the fruit in front of him, and it is impossible to follow him all the time. Ron looked away, followed Robin and Connis and left the crowded area. Bartolomeo glanced over there, but saw nothing. What's wrong, boss? No, it's nothing, it should be my illusion. After Ron and the others left Loguetown, they continued to travel aimlessly in East Blue. Ron will sign in on every island he passes by, while Connis and Kung Fu Manatee Shaoqi will continue to look for opponents and hone their actual combat experience. Robin will buy and collect a large number of books and information whenever he goes to a place. Gradually, they claim to be travelers and they also have some fame in East Blue. Soon, the remaining month of the year passed. In the winter snowy night with snowflakes floating on the sea, the voyager who wandered aimlessly in East Blue came to the small island where Kokoa village was located. Kokoa village, occupied by the dragon pirates, was gradually widened by Shirayuki. The outskirts of the village. In a room where orange trees are planted in the backyard, a teenage girl with short orange hair is holding a nautical book and watching intently. The next morning, Nami, are you up? A young girl with short blue hair and wheat-colored healthy skin yelled into the room. There is a lot of snow outside, I will go to the orange grove to have a look, you hurry up and... Yeah, listening to her words, the girl with short orange hair, who was sleeping on the table, half waking and half dreaming, responded. There was no movement outside after a door slamming sound. After a long while, 12-year-old Nami woke up leisurely, rubbing his eyes and raising his head. It's cold. She folded her arms and wrapped her thin clothing. Seeing a snow-white window, she muttered to herself, is it snowing? No wonder it's so cold. After finding a thick and old coat to put on, the whole body became warmer. The girl Nami walked out of the room with 2 slices of brown bread on the table. She opened the door of the house after eating the 2 slices of brown bread, which was already a bit cold. The snow outside has stopped, the sky is very clear, the daylight is warm, and you can see a piece of white snow. The orange trees near this hut have been covered with thick white snow, and the roads and fields in the distance are also completely white. What a beautiful snow scene. The girl Nami looked at the scenery in front of her, her eyes flashed with nostalgia. If only I could watch it with Belmere. It's been 2 years since the 23rd incident. Time passed really fast. I have to grow up quickly, and I must get the money as soon as possible, so that I can save the villagers and save this village. Nami's eyes gradually became firmer. But thinking of the huge amount of 100 million Baileys, she couldn't help sighing again. There was a plop. A large mass of snow fell from the orange trees and melted into the snow underground. Only then did Nami remember Aokiji's advice. No, you can't let the snow break the branches of the orange tree. She hurriedly started to remove the snow from the orange tree to avoid crushing the branches and affecting the next year's harvest. When she was busy, Ron, Robin, Canis, and Kung Fu manatee Xiaoqi had already got off the Voyager that was docked, and came to this quiet and peaceful Kokoa village, which was covered in snow. It's really a peaceful village. Robin, who is tall, slender, and wearing a white fur coat, looks extremely temperamental. Walking on the snow-covered road, he looks at the hut roads scattered all around with smoke. Master, is there really a guy offering a reward of 20 million Baileys here? Xiaoqi, wearing a thick red padded jacket and a felt hat, looked at Ron and asked expectantly. Ron, who had spread observation hockey covering the entire island, nodded to it, and looked at the tall building near the sea in the distance. It's over there. A flash of excitement and expectation flashed in Xiaoqi's eyes, and she turned to look at Canis next to her and said, "Can I come this time?" Canis' sister. Canis, who was wearing the same white fur coat as Robin, turned his head to look at it and smiled. The guy who offers 20 million Baileys as a reward, he must be quite strong. Xiaoqi, can you really do it? Xiaoqi heard the words and thought for a while and said to her, I don't know. But I really want to fight a powerful guy. It looked at Ron with black hair and ears next to him, wearing a black hooded fur coat, a black knife hanging from his left waist, and a slender and well-proportioned Ron. Master, do you think I can challenge and beat that guy? Probably not, Ron said casually. He glanced at Xiaoqi at his feet and smiled. Now you have not even learned moonwalk and hockey, and your strength has barely reached 100 kilograms. If you rush against that guy, your chances of winning are basically zero. Is it? Xiaoqi was a little depressed. Robin, who was standing on Ron's left, looked down at his frustrated look and couldn't help but smile. Canis smiled at it. That's the same as before. Give me the strongest. Xiaoqi, you go and deal with his men. Okay. On the field road paved with snow, Ron and Xiaoqi walked in front. The two women walked behind. Some of the villagers from Kokoa village who met on the face saw them all with a look of suspicion and vigilance. After carefully avoiding the oncoming Ron and others, they immediately hurried away. This scene made Robin and Canis slightly concerned. Robin, who was walking beside Ron, turned to look at the few villagers who left quickly, and then looked at Ron beside him and said, "The villagers in this village don't seem to welcome outsiders." Ron didn't look back, and said in a calm tone, "It's probably because of the evil dragon pirate group. As outsiders, they have unfairly ruled this village. That's why these villagers are wary and hostile to outsiders who will come later. Pirates rule the village, this kind of thing. Doesn't Marine take care of it?" Canis frowned slightly. There are also many scum in Marine. Ron's plain words made both Robin and Canis lost in thought. Xiaoqi, who is practicing boxing while walking, doesn't want complicated things at all. It only needs to consider how to become stronger. When a few people walked to the outskirts of Kokoa village, an orange orchard covered with snow appeared in front of him. In the park, an able girl with short blue hair and wheat-skinned skin was wearing an old cotton padded coat that was not too thick, holding a tool and working hard to get the snow down from the orange tree. "It seems that I have been doing it for a while, sweat is coming out of my forehead, but it seems that it is still a long way from removing the snow from each orange tree. Why do you want to get the snow down?" Canis looked at the girl who looked about her and Ron's age and was curious about her behavior. Robin said, "I think it is to prevent the snow from breaking the branches of the orange tree." "I see." Canis looked dazed. Ron recognized the girl with short blue hair, who should be the sister of Navigator Nami, one of the protagonists of the original book, Nuohigo. She is a strong girl with personality and rationality. It should be her and Nami who depend on each other now. It seems to be very hard, Ron thought, putting his left hand lightly on the hilt of the black knife on his waist and pulling out an inch. There was a sudden gust of wind in this orange orchard. The snow on the orange trees was like dust on a wooden frame, which was blown away in an instant and drifted across the sky. Aokiji was unable to open his eyes by the sudden wind, and when he opened his eyes again, the sky was full of snowflakes, and the snow on the orange trees had disappeared, so there was no need to worry about being crushed and broken branches. She blinked blankly. What happened? An inch of black knife came out from Ron's waist and returned silently. Robin looked at the dark-haired boy next to him with a calm side face that seemed to have nothing happened, and smiled. After Aokiji stood there for a while, he suddenly found a few people standing outside the orange grove not far away. Seeing the figures and clothes of those people, Aokiji judged that they had come from outside. After all, no one in this Kokoa Murakami can afford to wear such an expensive and brand new fur coat. Guests from outside, what can I do? Aokiji asked Ron and the others. As for oranges, there is no such thing in this season. We are not here to buy oranges. Standing between the beautiful blonde girl and the tall black-haired beauty, the black-haired teenager with a black knife on his waist looked at Aokiji with a high smile. We are travelers. We plan to spend this winter on this island. Now we want to find a place to live. Aokiji was startled when he heard the words. If you live in a place, you should go to the village, this is the outskirts. But before she could finish her words, the next sentence of the black-haired boy with a smile on his face and eyes that seemed to be able to see through people's hearts made her feel a sudden shock. If you can provide us with a place to live, we can pay 10,000 baileys a day. The entrance to the yard with plenty of orange trees. With short orange hair and less than 1.4 meters tall, the petite girl Nami stared blankly at Aokiji and the man, 2 women and a manatee behind her. Aokiji, who are these? Guests who will stay in our house for a period of time. Aokiji said to Nami with a big smile. Borrowing to live in our house. We have someone to live in. What else does Nami want to say? Aokiji leaned forward in front of her, whispering in her ear, take a day, 10,000 baileys. The girl Nami was startled, then opened her eyes and mouth wide. 10,000. Hush. Aokiji raised her finger to her lips. The girl Nami hurriedly held her mouth with her hand to avoid screaming. She lowered her voice, and was extremely excited for Aokiji. Really, it's really 10,000 baileys. Aokiji, you haven't been deceived, have you? How could I be deceived? These few people who came from outside are all real rich people. You see, this is the 10-day housing fee they paid me, 100,000 baileys. Aokiji handed a bag in his hand to Nami. 100,000. Little Nami took the heavy bag, and his eyes instantly transformed into Bailey's shape, completely falling into a state of financial obsession. Looking at Nami and Aokiji who were whispering ahead, Kanis found it interesting, and couldn't help but chuckled lightly. Hearing her laughter, Aokiji suddenly recovered. Turns off the guests. This will not work, she immediately whispered to Nami. Hurry up and tidy and clean the room. I will entertain guests below. No, got it. Nami nodded and was about to turn around and ran towards the house. Aokiji caught her again. Sure enough, I'll clean it. You may not be able to clean it. You can entertain the guests for me. After that, she turned around with her arms around Nami's neck, looked at Ron and others and smiled. This is my sister, Nami, let her chat with the guests first, I'll clean up the room. Gudong. Nami swallowed and looked at Ron, a little nervous. Hello, this is Kanis. Kanis walked up to her and smiled at her. You call Nami, right? It's so cute, can I touch your head? Please. Then I'm not welcome. Kanis reached out and stroked her head lightly. You have very smooth and beautiful hair. Thanks. Nami, who was gently touching her head, looked at the Kanis who looked a few years older than her, with a gentle smile, like an angel, and her nervousness gradually eased. Robin walked up to Nami and smiled at her. This is Robin, Nicole. Robin, I will be in trouble for a while. What a beautiful big sister. Nami looked at her and couldn't help thinking. Cuckoo. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi screamed a few times, and he raised his head to look at Ron beside him and said, Master, when can we eat? I'm hungry. ... Nami heard its voice and stared at it in surprise. The manatee is talking. It's called Xiaoqi, Alabasta's Kung Fu Manatee. Kanis introduced her with a smile. It's our captain's disciple. Captain. Nami moved his gaze from the talking manatee in a red cotton padded jacket and felt hat to the black-haired boy next to him in a black hooded fur coat with a black knife on his waist. He looks a bit younger than the Kanis sister and Robin's sister. Is he actually the captain? etc. Captain, could it be that you are pirates? Little Nami couldn't help asking. Not. Canis smiled at her, it's just a traveler on the ocean. Is there any difference? What's the difference? Canis thought for a while and said, it's probably the pirates who will snatch your things, but we won't. While Nuochigao tidied up and cleaned the room, Nami invited Ron into the house and took out the food at home to entertain. The food is only the cheapest black bread and some dried meat, which is tasteless. If you don't mind, please use. Nami, who brought the food to the table, said to Ron, and his voice as soft as a mosquito. Robin picked up a piece of hard brown bread, frowned slightly, and looked at Nami, is this what you usually eat? Canis took a bite, it was dry and tasteless, like chewing wood. Xiaoqi didn't care about food, so he just picked it up and stuffed it into his mouth, as long as he was full. Sure enough, these foods don't suit everyone's appetite. Then please ask a few guests to wait for me for a while, I will go to the village to buy it. Nami said quickly. There was no money before, but now with the 100,000 Baileys paid in advance, I can buy some good food. Nami was about to run towards the door. Behind him came the calm voice of the black-haired boy named Ron. No, Nami suddenly stopped, grasping the 100,000 Baileys cloth bag tightly, and lowered his head. Really? How could these wealthy people from outside live in a poor home like them? What do you want to borrow to live here, 10,000 Baileys a day and the like? It's probably just playing around with poor people like them, just for fun. Hee. As for food, we have brought it and don't have to buy it again. Ron's voice rang behind her. I see, I will pay back the money now. Nami, who hadn't recovered from her own imagination, gritted her teeth, turned around with crystal tears in the corner of her eyes, and handed out the cloth bag in her hand. Quote. Both Canis and Robin were taken aback, with doubts on their faces. Nami, are you? Canis looked at her puzzled. Only then did Nami suddenly come back to his senses. Ron, sitting at the table, took a sip, turned to look at her and smiled. Don't worry, we are not the kind of rich people who use money to make fun of the poor, and the rent paid to you will not be recovered. Facing his smile that seemed to see through everything and the smile that Canis and Robin reacted to, Nami's face turned red in an instant. But at the same time, looking at the outsiders I met on the first day, a warmth that had never been felt since Belmare's death rose in Nami's heart. The cold winter and snow days don't seem to be so cold anymore. Guest, I've packed up, now I'm going up to sea. Nami, what are you doing? When Nuohigo cleaned up the room upstairs, and walked down the stairs, he was shocked when he saw Nami sitting at the table and eating food in front of him. How can you eat your guest's food? It doesn't matter, we asked her to eat. Canis, who was sitting next to Nami, smiled at her, would you like to eat together? Nuochigao heard the words, looked at the table full of foods that had never seen before, exuding an extremely good smell, and couldn't help swallowing. Robin walked up to her with a snack and smiled at her. This is Loguetown's coconut heart crisp. Have a taste. Nuochigao smelled the tangy aroma, and her mouth secreted fluid uncontrollably. Then, I will taste a piece. After she ate the piece Robin handed over, she felt the deliciousness bloom in her mouth, and tears couldn't help but overflow from the corner of her eyes. Since she was little, she has never eaten such delicious food. Is this the taste of happiness? Robin and Canis feed Nuochigao and Nami. Sitting at the table, Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi just stuffed food in his mouth regardless of his disregard. Ron, sitting next to it, drank the sparkling sabayati in his glass, and smiled at Nami, who was sitting on the opposite side, eating the steak. Now it's so small, but the future can be so big, it's incredible. After eating, only a half of the food on the table is left. Nuochi held down Nami's head, who was full and drunk, and bent over to apologize to Ron and said in shame, Diaresis, it was obviously the food of the guests, but we accidentally ate so much. I'm really sorry. Don't mind, we still have a lot of food. Robin smiled at the two women. She has a good impression of these two girls who depend on each other, and she can see her own shadow in them. Nokigao and Nami cast grateful glances at her. Ron stood up and said, as the room cleaned up. Nuochigao nodded hurriedly. Then I will go up first. Ron took the lead upstairs and went to rest in the room. After Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi and Robin Canis said hello, they also went out to practice their boxing skills in the orange orchard in the snow. Only Canis, Robin, Aokiji and Nami are left in the house. Robin and Canis chatted with them. And the upstairs clean and simple house. Ron took off his black coat and hung it on the hanger on the side. The black knife chushui on his waist returned to the system space. Ma Zhao, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, and there was a light curtain that only he could see before his eyes. Displayed on the light curtain are his attribute bar and the item bar obtained by signing in. In the list of items in the dozen or so columns, a brand new one is at the top. Special props Devil Fruit Copy Card. This is the reward Ron got when he signed in after arriving on this island. Devil Fruit Copy Card. You can copy the Devil Fruit ability it eats from Demon Fruit Power. Conditions of use. After the target loses consciousness, touch the target for more than 30 seconds. Note 1. This item is a one-time item. Note 2. The copied Devil Fruit ability does not fear the side effects of seawater. Note 3. The ability of copied Devil Fruit is both. After obtaining the ability of copied Devil Fruit, you can eat Devil Fruit again. When Ron saw the Note 2 feat, his eyes lit up instantly. He has never considered eating Devil Fruit. One is because he has not met the right and satisfactory ability, and the other is because Devil Fruit is afraid of the side effects of seawater. In some cases, this side effect can be a fatal weakness. And now, with this Devil Fruit Copy Card, the ability to copy is not afraid of the weakness of the sea. He has no worries at all. If you can find another powerful Devil Fruit, his overall strength will definitely be raised to a level. In the evening, the infants were abandoned on the battlefield and adopted by their adoptive mothers. The adoptive mothers died because of the evil dragon pirates group. Now they depend on each other for their lives and rely on the orange orchard to make money to support the family, but most of the money has to be regularly taken away by the evil dragon pirates group. After knowing what happened to Nami and Aokiji, Canis showed some pity and sympathy for the two sisters, and was even more angry with the evil dragon pirate group. When Nami and Aokiji went to boil hot water, Canis looked angrily at Robin, who was sitting at the table drinking tea. I didn't think that the dragon pirates group should be so. Sister Robin, let's help them drive away the dragon pirates group. Quote. Calm down. Robin was as calm as ever. She has experienced the disaster of O'Hara since she was a child, and she who lost her life and wandered alone has seen more suffering than anyone has ever seen, and understands the suffering in this world better than anyone else. Talk to Ron about this matter later. What do you want to discuss with me? Robin and Canis looked up. Wearing black trousers and a white long-sleeved t-shirt, Ron, who looked like a boy next door, was standing on the stairs. Canis told him the matter in a few words. After Ron heard it, he nodded slightly. That's how it is. Captain, you also think that the dragon pirates are very bad, right? Then we should hurry up and drive them away from this island. Canis excitedly rushed to Ron, who was standing in front of her. Ron pulled away the chair by the table, sat down beside Robin, and said in a calm tone, if the three of you are confident that you can deal with the captain of the pirate group and his crew who are offering a reward of 20 million Baileys, then go. Even if you are in danger this time, I will not take action. Canis was taken aback when he heard the words. Hesitated immediately on his face. Robin looked at Ron beside him and said, what do you think about this? Do you think we should help? Ron picked up the glass and took a sip of water. Can help. Canis's eyes were happy, but Ron's next sentence made her face freeze again. But I won't do it. I really can't get any interest in these guys. Ron put down the water cup and looked at Canis. If you decide to deal with this dragon pirate group, then this dragon pirate group will be my assessment of you at this stage. If you believe in your own strength, go now. Drive away or destroy them. Robin looked at Ron and said, we can also choose to accumulate strength, obtain intelligence, and wait until we are confident that we can win even without relying on you. Do you mean that? Ron smiled at her. Correct. Several days passed. Nami got acquainted with Canis and Robin and kindly called them Sister Canis and Sister Robin. Ron is still directly named. This period is definitely the happiest period since the death of her adoptive mother Belmere. On this day, Ron was taking a bath in the wooden barrel in the bathroom. Nami's voice suddenly sounded outside the door. Hey, can you talk to me now? Ron opened his eyes, the world unfolded, and a clear scene of little Nami leaning against the bathroom door suddenly appeared in his mind. Say it, when are you going to leave here? Nami leaned against the door and asked softly. Let's start spring next year. Spring is coming. Little Nami whispered softly. Ron in the bathtub inside the room looked slightly. The smell of reluctance. Does she want to let herself wait for someone to stay longer? Is it interesting on the sea? It's very interesting. Do you want to go to sea too? Nami whispered. Rather than going to sea, I want to make money and become a rich man like you. Ron noticed the change in her mood, and he had a judgment in his heart. He closed his eyes and said, why do you want to make money so much? Nami did not speak. After a while, after Nami took a deep breath, he said, if you are the captain, will Sister Canis and Sister Robin listen to you? Okay, then, you can leave at the end of this month. Ron's eyes flashed with surprise. Why? Nami, who was leaning at the door, raised his head and said softly. Next month when the snow warms up, those Arlong guys will definitely come again. Your money and boat will be taken away. So you better leave this month. These days, thank you. After Nami said this, he lowered his head and walked away quickly. Under an orange tree, Aokiji found Nami, who was hiding here with her legs in her arms. You really are here? Nami looked at her, tears bursting into her eyes. Nokigao, I'm sorry, I still can't do it. I don't want Sister Canis and Sister Robin to hate me. Obviously, it is more important to make money to save the lives of the villagers, but I am so selfish, I'm sorry. On the day Ron and the others came, when Nami slept with Aokiji at night, he also mentioned that he would conspiracy to defraud Ron some people for money, or secretly contact the dragon pirates to save their money and ships. But it was dissuaded by Aokiji. After that, I experienced this time of getting along. Nami's heart also became very tangled. Since Belmare's death, she has never met someone so kind to her and Aokiji. It is really difficult for Nami to betray Canis and Robin, two shining and gentle sisters who are so kind to her for the sake of money. After all, the current little Nami has not yet gone to sea, has not experienced the cruelty of the sea, and has grown into the witch of Kokoa, who can betray her friends for money. Looking at Nami, tearful in front of her eyes. The corners of Nuoki's eyes were unconvincing, and there were crystal tears overflowing. She stretched out her hand and hugged her gently. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. You did a good job. If you have money, you can earn more slowly in the future. This winter, nothing happens, okay. Crying Nami nodded vigorously in her arms, her voice choked. Next year. I will go to sea to make money in the spring of the coming year. Wait, when I come back next time, I will definitely come back with 100 million Baileys. Must. Inside the room, Observation Hockey heard everything. Ron slowly opened his eyes. In the next few days, the winter snow gradually melted. Some villagers went out to fish and saw the Voyager. At the same time, news about seeing outsiders spread in the village. Arlong Paradise. A human pirate from the Dragon Pirate group hurriedly ran to Arlong. A stranger came from the village. Arlong, a murloc, with a long, hard, sawn nose, narrowed his eyes slightly. Explain this matter clearly. After the human pirate told the ship and all the things the villagers had seen about a man, 2 women and a manatee. Arlong said to Shalba and Kruby next to him, you two go and have a look on that boat to see if there are any valuables. Learn. Soon, Xiaohachi and Kruby returned to Arlong Paradise. Captain, I can't get in. Shalba touched his head and said. What? Arlong frowned. Kruby explained. There is a light shield like a bubble that protects the ship, and it is completely impossible to break through. Absurd. How could there be such a thing? Arlong couldn't believe it. He had never heard of this weapon. If you don't believe me, boss, you can go and see for yourself. Xiaoba looked at him and said. Arlong took someone to see it. It was discovered that there was indeed a layer of light shield that completely shielded the ship. Neither shells nor sharp blades could break it. How can this be? Arlong's face was gloomy. Kruby reminded. Captain, is it Devil Fruit's ability? You mean, someone hid in this ship and used Devil Fruit's abilities? Arlong looked at the unbreakable ship in front of him, and squinted his eyes. It is true that this possibility is not ruled out. Tweet, you look at this ship here, Shalba, Kruby, you take people and follow me to find the outsiders, catch all those guys. I don't believe I can't open this ship. Ship, Murloc Arlong said viciously with fierce eyes. On the same day, he took the members of the Dragon Pirate Group and searched for the outsiders in the village of Kokoa. After hearing the news, Aegean, the garrison of Kokoa village, suddenly remembered what Nuohigo had said to him when he came to buy groceries. The words seemed to mention, guest. Aegean, sweating all over, immediately rode on his bicycle and ran towards the orange grove on the outskirts of the village. When Aegean arrived at the orange orchard, he saw Nuohigo who was pruning branches and the slender Robin who was wearing a white fur coat next to her. He knew that he was an outsider. Nuohigo. Aegean pushing a bicycle shouted to Nuoji. Nuoji raised her eyes and saw him smile and said, "Ah, Jian, it's been a long time since I saw you, what's the matter?" Aegean looked at her panically and said, "The big thing is not good, Arlong is searching the village for those outsiders." Nuohigo was startled when he heard the words, but Robin squinted his eyes. Anyway, Aegean glanced at Robin next to Nuohigo. "Hurry up and let these guests in your house hide." Before he finished speaking, there was a voice that made him stand upright behind him. "Ah, I found it." Aegean and Nuohigo trembled all over when they heard the voice. They turned their heads to look. Xiaoba and Kruby of the Evil Dragon Pirate Group are slowly walking towards this side from the road after off fitness. "Then it's an outsider." Xiaobai put his tentacle on his forehead, looking at the standing in the orange orchard. Robin said. Aegean and Nuochi have a few drops of sweat coming out of their high foreheads, cold hands and feet. "Luo, Sister Robin, you go first, go back first." Nuochi stood up and said with his back to Robin. Robin glanced at Nuohigo, whose hands and feet were trembling with his back facing her. "I can't hide it from this situation." Kruby walked to the front of the orange grove and took out a phone bug. "Captain, I found it. The outsider is here in the orange grove." Arlong's iconic sawtooth nose appeared on the phone bug, and Arlong's cold voice sounded from it. "Orange orchard. So, our little navigator already knew it." Nuohigo's eyes shrank slightly. Kruby glanced at Nuoji and said, "I'm afraid it is." Arlong sneered a few times in the phone bug. "You are waiting there, I will be there soon." After the phone worm hangs up, Xiaoba raised the knife in his hand and put it on Aegean's neck with cold hands and feet. Kruby looked at Nuohigo and Robin standing in the orange orchard. "You should still have companions, let them come out too. Of course, there is also the little navigator from our dragon pirate group." Nuoki's forehead was high in cold sweat, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. At this moment, a hand lightly touched her shoulder. Nuochi was tall and shocked, turned to look, and stood beside her. Robin, who was more than half of her head, looked at her with a smile. "It doesn't matter, relax." Looking at Robin's relaxed smile, Nuohigo's tense mood inexplicably eased. Just then the door of the house opened. Hearing the movement, Kanis and Nami appeared at the door of the house. When he saw Xiaohachi and Kruby, Nami's pupils shrank sharply, and his body froze in place. "Why, Nami, it's been a long time." Xiaoba Chong. Nami smiled. Kanis saw Xiaoba's knife on Ajian's neck, his eyes condensed slightly. "Nami, these guys shouldn't be your friends." At this moment, Nami was stiff, with cold hands and feet, her mouth open, completely speechless. "How come, now that winter has not passed, how come they come here?" When Nami was lost, the blue-skinned, more than 2-meter-high Murloc Arlong appeared in front of the orange orchard with a large saw blade and a group of young brothers armed with weapons. He looked at Nami in front of the house and said, "Nami, the guests didn't even notify us when they came. It's too far-sighted, right? You are a capable cadre of our dragon pirates." Looking at the Murloc Arlong's cold eyes and grinning sharp teeth, the scene of Belmare's death flashed through Nami's mind again. A huge fear rose in her heart, causing her pupils to shrink drastically, and she couldn't help shaking. Cadre of the Evil Dragon Pirate Group. Kanis looked at Nami next to him in amazement. "What exactly is going on?" "Sorry, Nami lowered his head and clenched his fists. She made a deal with this guy and became a navigator of the Dragon Pirates. She saved up to 100 million Baileys to redeem the lives of this village and all the villagers and her freedom." A plain young voice sounded in the sky. Nami looked up suddenly. Quote! Nuohigo, Aegean, Xiaoba, Kruby and Arlong also looked up. I saw on the roof of the house, a black-haired teenager in a black hooded fur coat was sitting there comfortably, holding a huge wine gourd in his hand. A manatee wearing a red cotton padded jacket was standing beside him. Boy, who are you? Murloc Arlong stared coldly at the dark-haired boy who appeared on the roof for some unknown time. Ron took a sip from the endless jug, and then lay down on the roof, basking in the warm sunlight, without even looking at him, or, not worth seeing at all. This ignorant attitude immediately made Murloc Arlong blue veins bulge on his forehead, and his eyes flashed with anger and viciousness. Inferior humans, how dare to be so arrogant? Come on to me, catch all these foreign guys, and I will cut off that guy's limbs myself. Listening to Arlong's harsh words, both Nami and Nuaochigao narrowed their eyes and turned pale. Etc. Before Nuaochigao had time to speak, Kruby reached out and grabbed Robin next to her. But the next scene made Nuoki's eyes widen. I saw it. Robin crossed his arms, petals flying all over his body. 6-wheel flower anchor flower. In an instant, 6 white arms grew from the Murloc Kruby's body, grabbing his neck, arms and feet, causing his body to bend backwards against the structure of the body, making the sound of bones rattling. Ah, it hurts, this is devil fruit ability. Kruby, who was full of pain, opened his eyes wide, and his face was full of horror. Arlong's expression also condensed. This woman turned out to be demon fruit power. Ahem. Kruby was strangled and almost turned over by Akugan's fainting. Kruby, 6 swordsman octopus Xiaoba saw his friend's face full of pain, and couldn't help but let go of Ajian, and immediately slashed at the few arms that grew out of him with a knife. At the moment when those arms were about to be cut, those arms immediately turned into petals and spread out. This woman, Arlong dashed forward to Robin, raised the saw blade in his hand, and slashed towards Robin. Next second, a group of red shadows slammed over from the side and hit Arlong's left body heavily. The huge force caused him to be knocked out in an instant. Nuaochigao and Nami looked at the Kung Fu manatee Xiaoqi who was standing in front of Robin in a boxing posture with dull expressions. Isn't that a pet? Turned out to hit that Arlong. Am I dreaming? It turns out that you put this village on your shoulders. It's really hard work. Canis put his hand on Nami's head, and the gentle voice made Nami's body tremble slightly, his nose sore, and tears almost came out again. But she held it back. She looked at Canis and couldn't help asking. Sister Canis, who are you guys anyway? Didn't you say it before? It's just a traveler pursuing freedom on the sea. Canis smiled and patted her head. Then Nami watched Canis, who was wearing a white fur coat and black boots, walked from her side towards the orange grove in front of her. Under her wide-eyed gaze, the beautiful blonde hair behind Canis's bowed head gradually dispersed, dancing in the wind, like an angel. Streams of pitch-black liquid, like flowing silver, circulate outside Canis's body. In Nami's wide-open eyes, a dozen slender iron thorns condensed into a hovering outside her body. Go with. As Canis stretched out his hand, those iron thorns turned into extremely fast black rays and blasted towards the dragon pirate group outside the orange orchard. Be careful, Xiao Ba yelled, and the octopus tentacles waved a long knife to block the iron thorns, but the companions behind him could not stop the iron thorns that moved with Canis's heart. Just like cutting rice, in just an instant, more than a dozen members of the evil dragon and pirate group screamed and were pierced by iron stabs and fell into a pool of blood. Xiaohachi and Kruby were entangled by those iron thorns, and couldn't be distracted at all. Nuaochigao and Ajian were shocked. That evil dragon and pirate group turned out to be. There is also a demon fruit power. Arlong's angry voice rang in everyone's ears. He stepped on his feet and quickly rushed to Robin and Xiaoqi. Good job. Xiaoqi's eyes were full of excitement. Its strong tail slammed on the ground forcefully, and the body instantly disappeared in place when Arlong attacked. Disappeared. Nuoji was taken aback. In the next second, Xiaoqi appeared right in front of Arlong and hit his chest with a punch. Bang! Arlong, who took the punch abruptly, felt the punch force pierce through the hard muscles and skin, rushing in his body arbitrarily, clenching his teeth, and bloodshot eyes. He suddenly lowered his head, and wanted to pierce the obstructive manatee in front of him with a sharp, hard nose. But at this moment, Robin uses flower fruit's ability. 12-wheeled flower twist. The 12 arms that grew from Arlong tightly tightened Arlong's neck and limbs, and the powerful restraint made him completely unable to lower his head to attack. Kung Fu Manatee Shaoqi took a deep breath, and simultaneously blasted out his vigorous fists, smashing into the chest of the Murloc Arlong in front of him. Manatee Boxing, Double Bombardment. Boom! A punch directly penetrated through the chest of Murloc Arlong and exploded behind him. Arlong let out a dull cough, his face full of pain and ferociousness, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Robin also strengthened his abilities. The arms that grew on Arlong's body were strained, and his body twisted backwards, making a clucking sound of broken bones, which made him extremely painful, and his eyes began to congestion. Especially under the attack of Nair's arm that held his neck and made him unable to breathe, Arlong's consciousness began to blur. Yes, when he walked to Robin's side, the flying blonde Canis raised his hand. In an instant, the speed of those iron thorns accelerated again, and a dozen iron thorns quickly revolved around Xiaoba and Kruby like black light, and bloody wounds soon appeared on the two of them. Several iron thorns pierced Kruby's limbs and nailed the tentacles of Octopus Xiaohachi to the ground one by one, making the two completely incapacitated. The rest of the members of the Dragon Pirate group were almost completely wiped out by the Canis controller Iron Stinger. It was easier than she and Robin had expected before. After doing this, Canis turned his head to look at Nami and Nuachigao with shocked faces, smiled at the two girls and asked, "Is it better to kill these guys?" Nami and Nuachigao looked at her and Xiaohachi and Kruby, who were in a pool of blood under her feet in a daze. Arlong collapsed in a twisted body not far away, his eyes turned white, and the corners of his mouth coughed up blood. He had long been lost consciousness. The powerful and vicious dragon and pirate group that ruled this village, unexpectedly. Is it all gone? Not far away, after witnessing all this and being extremely shocked, Aegean recovered to find that it was all true, and his heart was even more excited and surprised. He lowered his head and wiped tears of joy. "Belmere, have you seen it?" Listening to the name uttered from his mouth, Nami and Noki trembled tall, and a line of tears flowed from their eye sockets uncontrollably. Think of the voice and face of Belmere, the gentle and strong adoptive mother. I remembered that she died in the hands of this guy. I remembered that I would never see her again. With tears in her eyes, Nami couldn't help clenching his fists, and looked at Arlong, who fell on the ground with hatred. I want to avenge Belmere. She strode to the face of Arlong, who had fainted and fell to the ground, bent down and grabbed a blood-stained iron spur on the ground, and raised her hands tremblingly. Nami. Nuachigao didn't have time to say anything. Nami pierced the iron thorn in his hand without hesitation. The sharp iron puncture pierced Arlong's hard skin and pierced his neck. The blood that was the same red as a human suddenly gushed out, splashing Nami's face. Covered in blood, she seemed to lose all of her strength at once, and she sank tremblingly in a pool of blood, and fell to the ground with a stab of iron in her hand. Nami. When the tearful Nuachigao walked to her and hugged her gently, Nami finally couldn't help but burst into tears, as if to vent all the sadness and hatred of these years. Canis and Robin looked at them in the pool of blood and smiled at each other. Ron, who was lying on the roof enjoying the daylight, opened his eyes slightly and glanced at the crying short orange girl below. Really a crying ghost. After the death of Arlong, the dragon pirate group suddenly fell apart, and the remaining guys were gathered by the ecstatic Kokoa villagers and driven out of the island. Nuachigao and Nami made a very hearty meal for Ron and the others. Although it was less than 1/10,000th of what they helped, it was still the most sincere gratitude that the two women can express. At the banquet, Nami apologized for wanting to lie to them and betray them before. Robin and Canis naturally wouldn't take it to heart. Nami's strength that can carry both the villager and the village on one shoulder made Robin and Canis look at each other with admiration. After the banquet, Nuachigao wanted to return the rent. But Ron also refused. That night, while Ron was still taking a bath in the barrel, Nami's voice came from outside the door. "This time, thank you so much. Just thank you for a few of them, don't have to thank me, I didn't do anything." Ron closed his eyes, enjoying himself comfortably. "But you are their captain. If you don't let Sister Canis and the others do it, they probably won't do it either." Nami leaned against the door and said softly, "Don't think too much, I just don't bother to care about those guys, they can do whatever they want." Ron said casually, "Is it?" A smile flashed in Nami's lowered eyes. Sure enough, as Robin's sister said, she was a gentle person, but she wanted to look like she had nothing to do with her. If you really don't want to help, you won't be able to explain to her at all at that time. If you are the captain, are you better than Kana's sisters and others? What do you think? Have no idea. Nami sat down by the doorway and hugged his knees and said, I thought Arlong was very strong and no one could beat him, but now I think Sister Canis and Sister Robin are stronger than them. I can't imagine what it will be like. How powerful are you guys in the sea? It's quite a lot, and there are even more powerful ones. Is it? A look of yearning flashed in Nami's eyes. I don't know if I will meet someone who is strong and kind like you Yamato when I go to sea in the future as a navigator. Ron didn't answer her. There was silence between the two for a while. Nami asked, I heard you talking with Robin's sister before, are you planning to leave early? Ron hummed. He is really afraid of troubles, especially those troubles with gratitude. After a few seconds of silence, Nami asked, when do you plan to leave? Tomorrow. So fast. Nami was a little surprised. Ron, leaning on the bathtub, opened his eyes. If you want to go to sea, you can go with us. When Nami heard his words, his eyes widened slightly, and there was excitement and surprise in his bright eyes. The phrase, I'm willing, almost blurted out. But after calming down a bit, she still shook her head. Although I really want to be your companion and go out to sea with you, but sure enough, forget it. Why? A 12-year-old girl with short orange hair sat on her knees by the wall at the door, and whispered. Partners should help each other. But now I can't help at all. Even if I get on your boat, I will only be the one to be helped. I don't want this. Ron inside the bathtub chuckled. This enlightenment is not bad, so you will surely meet the most suitable companion in the future. When Nami heard his words, a smile appeared on his small face, and his bright eyes were full of longing. It would be great to be so. At that time, I will also be able to swim in the sea with my companions, and meet you again in the free and broad sea. At that time, I will definitely grow up to be a navigator for you, Sister Robin and Sister Canis with admiration. It seems to be because they knew they would leave tomorrow. In this last time, Nami said a lot of things in his heart with Ron, some things she didn't even say to Nuohigo. For some reason, she felt that she could speak freely in front of this mysterious young man who was only 2 years older than her but matured like an adult. The next day, early morning, Ron and Robin, Canis and Xiaoqi left the house without disturbing Nuochigao. When a few people walked out of the orange orchard, Nami was waiting there with an orange tree about 50 centimeters in size. His body was a little wet with dew, apparently he had been waiting here for a long time. Nami, Canis and Robin were a little surprised. Nami smiled at them cheerfully. Let me take you to the shore. She held the orange tree all the way to the shore, and then gave the orange tree in her hand to Canis. Your kindness to our Kokoa village is something I can't repay now. This orange tree was planted by Belmir and I. It is my most precious treasure. I hope you can accept it. Canis looked at Nami, who was serious in front of him, and looked at Ron. Ron nodded. Just take it. Canis took the orange tree in Nami's hand, and a bright and cheerful smile appeared on Nami's face. Wait for Canis, Robin and Xiaoqi to board the ship. Ron, wearing a black hooded coat with a black knife on his waist, stood on the shore and glanced at the tall building in Arlong Paradise not far away. He put his left hand casually on the black knife handle on the left waist, and turned his head to Nami next to him. Did you say before that you couldn't imagine how strong someone stronger than Canis and the others would be? Nami nodded, looking at him a little puzzled. What's the matter? Suddenly say this. It's an eye-opener for you to wait so long this morning. As Ron said, his left hand gently pulled out the black knife on his waist, and in Nami's puzzled eyes, he slashed at the Arlong Paradise side at random, and then returned the knife to its sheath. Accompanied by the sound of the knock, that the black knife was completely returned to its sheath. There was a strong wind on the coast, and the sea rolled around. Nami's eyes were shocked and dull in the flurry of hair blowing in the wind. A pitch-black flying slash, with an extremely violent and ferocious posture, pushed forward all the way, slashing straight to the tall building hundreds of meters away. The mountains and forests along the road are all separated by a line, and the ground cracks with a very neat crack that is cut out with a ruler. Along with the advancing of that dark slash, the tall building in Arlong Paradise was in front of the dark slashing air, like tofu, which was divided into 2 pieces, and then countless cracks spread out from the incision to the surrounding area, starting the whole collapsed. Witnessing this scene with his own eyes, Nami was so shocked that he couldn't help swallowing. This is his strength, this is the strength of their captains as Sister Canis. How amazing! Is this really the power of human beings? Compared with this power, what is a guy like Arlong? Nami is a little hard to imagine. That black-haired boy who looks gentle and laid back on weekdays, who is not a few years older than her, has such a terrifying power. Was that young man who was willing to listen to her quietly, turned out to be such a powerful expert? Ron Yu. When she recovered and turned her head, Ron, who was standing next to her before, had disappeared. Nami was taken aback, only to realize that the ship leaning on the shore had also left the coast for nearly 100 meters. In the distance, beside the railing on the deck of the Voyager, Canis and Robin, who were lying on the railing, saw her look over, smiled and waved at her. Goodbye, Nami. 1 month later, early spring. Sea Circle calendar was 1515, 5 years before the beginning of the original plot. Ron is 15 years old, Canis is 16 years old, and Nicole Robin is 23 years old. After leaving Kokoa village, he spent some time in East Blue. Later, when the Voyager approached Ron's first visit to the first island in the world, Ron went back and took a look while hiding his whereabouts. Everything is stable on the island. Harris and Aunt Mary have already given birth to a child, and Mars has also set up a family. The pirate group who pretended to be under the Dragon Pirate Group has not come back since then. Ron felt relieved. After leaving a large sum of money for Daddy Harris and Mars each, he left quietly. In the next few months, after East Blue signed into another 20 islands, the Voyager left East Blue. At this time, as they defeated the Dragon Pirate Group, as well as various large and small pirate groups before, their reputation has spread all over East Blue unknowingly. It's not a pirate group, it's not a bounty hunter, it's not a marine, and it's not a revolutionary army. It has no fixed place on the sea and wanders around. Like a boat floating on the ocean, no one knows where they will go, where they will appear, and what they will do. Mysterious, unknown and powerful, lonely high. Especially the mysterious captain of the Ship of Freedom. Traveler Ron. This name continues to circulate in various islands, and it has a vague trend of becoming a legend in East Blue. Ron himself didn't know anything about this. But if he knew it, he would probably find it even more inexplicable. I just checked in on various islands, and taught some pirates and bounty hunters who didn't have long eyes. How did it become a legend? After arriving in South Blue. The island climate and custom food different from East Blue make Ron, Canis and Robin feel fresh. As a result, another big purchase was made and the food storehouse of the Voyager was full. Then go to the next island. During the period, I also encountered some pirates who did not have long eyes. South Blue's pirates are generally stronger than East Blue, but that's all. Just let Canis and Xiaoqi grind and sharpen them, Ron can't even give up the desire to shoot. While Ron and others were rampant in South Blue. Marineford. Marshal Sengoku called Garp, passed 3 reports to him. What's this? Garp opened in doubt, and Ron's name was introduced into his eyes, and Garp's eyes condensed slightly. Sitting behind the table, Sengoku crossed his arms on the table. One is one of 7 warlords of the sea, Gecko Moria's statement, one is one of 7 warlords of the sea crocodile, and the other is a recent statement. A report from East Blue on what he did in East Blue. Garp grinned after reading it quickly, revealing the big white fang. Wow, ha ha ha, I was able to teach both Crocodile and Moria a lesson, and force them to ask Marine to complain. That kid is quite capable. The attack on 7 warlords of the sea has not caused any casualties. This shouldn't be a major event. He dropped the report in his hand and looked at Sengoku and said, the report submitted by East Blue should be fine, right? Isn't he just teaching some pirates who don't have long eyes to wander around leisurely? Is there any problem with this? These are all okay, it's not worth pursuing. Sengoku said solemnly, but there is only one problem. What? Garp took out a bag of senbei from nowhere, opened it and ate it. His companion on the ship, there is a suspected O'Hara survivor, Nicole Robin, who is offering a reward of 79 million Bailey. Garp ate the senbei with his hand slightly. Nicole Robin. Good. Sengoku narrowed his eyes and said, do you have anything to say, Garp, about this? That kid really caused a lot of trouble. Garp scratched his head in annoyance. Are you sure that is Nicole Robin? Sengoku. I heard they showed up in South Blue. Aokiji has already gone. Sengoku crossed his hands on the table, and his eyes under the glasses looked directly at Garp. If you are sure that the person is really Nicole Robin. What if it's okay? Garp took a bite of the senbei and glanced at Sengoku. It's a big deal to catch Nico Robin back, or do you plan to treat him as a criminal because of this kind of thing? Garp, you should understand that if he protects Nicole Robin, then it is indeed a crime. Sengoku said lowly. Garp was silent. I just ate senbei in big mouthfuls, and smashed the fine crumbs all over the floor. South Blue. Ron and others ate at a restaurant on an island. Next to him was a young woman wearing a heart-shaped lipstick with an amazing appetite, and she was surrounded by dishes. Eat more than me. Manatee Xiaoqi was dumbfounded. Bonnie, you really can eat. Canis couldn't help but looked at her and said. No way, the side effect of breaking devil fruit is that it makes me feel hungry all the time. Big Stomach King Jewelry Bonnie said while eating, very ugly. Thank you for inviting me to dinner. Robin, who was sitting next to her, picked up the coffee and took a sip. It was elegant and generous, which contrasted sharply with her eating. Ron put his cheek in one hand and looked at her and said, after eating, let's go, don't follow us anymore. Jewelry Bonnie was stunned when he heard the words and looked up at Ron. Huh. Are you unwilling to accept me as a companion? Although I can eat a little bit, I am still quite strong. When she said this, her bulging mouth was still chewing on the food, causing her words to be a little fuzzy. Our boat can't support you. Ron took a sip and said. Jewelry Bonnie swallowed all the food in his mouth, and looked at Ron with a knife and fork in his hand. Liar. You are so strong, won't you get money if you grab a few pirate groups? Canis just wanted to refute, but then he thought about it. Ah, it seems to be the case. All the money they spent during this period seemed to have been snatched from the pirates. Don't you want to go out to sea to be a pirate? Why do you have to get on our boat? Ron was speechless. Of course it's because you are very strong. Bonnie said of course. She was at sea before and saw Ron and the others dealing with a pirate ship. Whether it was Canis's ability to control steel or the Kung Fu Manatee's physical skills, she was amazed. And the black-haired boy casually swiped the slash to cut off the pirate ship, and Jewelry Bonnie, who had just gone out to sea as a pirate at this time, felt extremely shocked and in awe. If you can follow them and become their companions, I should be able to go anywhere in this sea and eat countless delicacies. With this thought in mind, Bonnie followed Ron all the way to this island. Depending on the strong, it's a good way to live for the pirates. Ron put down his wine glass and looked at her. Bonnie's eyes were happy. Did you agree? No, it's a pity, it still doesn't work. Why? My ability should be useful to you. Bonnie was puzzled. It shouldn't be because I eat too much, right? Bonnie. Robin glanced at her. Are you treating us as pirates? Bonnie was taken aback after hearing this. Isn't it? Not. Canis looked at her and smiled. If you are looking for a powerful companion to go to sea as a pirate, then we may not be able to let you on board. It's not a pirate, obviously so powerful. Bonnie stared at Ron and Canis and Robin blankly, a little confused. The life of a traveler is different from that of a pirate. There are not so many magnificent waves, but more peace. We will wander around South Blue for a long time. You can experience it on a boat for a while. If you can accept this kind of life, then I welcome you on board and become the 5th person on this ship. Ron looked at Bonnie and said. After thinking about it, Bonnie nodded to him. Good. The 5th person. Aren't we only 3? Canis curiously asked, or do you count Xiaoqi? Ron took a sip and said, we still have a deputy captain on board, but he is not there yet. Deputy captain. Robin and Canis, who heard Ron talk about it for the first time, looked at each other, both surprised and curious. The island of white soil at this time. Bardage, in the empty space in the city. Dragon claw. The boy Sabo wrapped hockey with both hands, forming a dragon's claw shape, and grabbed it with a slash that had been cut in front of him. His figure was pushed back by that slash and slid out 10 meters, and only then did his hands buckle hard, crushing the slender but tough sword energy. Merman karate, Tang Sao Wa is punching. Accompanied by the tender voice of the girl koala, who jumped into the air, she lifted a punch and volleyed towards the slender figure in the center of the venue. An all-round shock wave penetrated the air, expelled the air wave, and hit the figure. Kuina, who was wrapped in a black robe and with a blue long ponytail, didn't even look at it. The Hidao text he held in his right hand chopped away. The surging sword power condensed into a blue dragon, instantly breaking through the shock wave, and the trend is unabated. Attack towards Koala. Koala dodges quickly. Sabo stepped on her foot, and rushed to Kuina very quickly, with the fierce and domineering dragon claw in her right hand entangled in the waves of chi, and Haki grabbed her at the door. Kuina's clear and calm eyes glanced at him. The footsteps moved slightly, the figure was slightly to the side, and at the moment of Sabo's powerful blow with a relaxed and freehand gesture, the long knife that had not been sheathed in his left hand was pushed up and centered on Sabo's chin. Sabo's consciousness, with a heavy blow to his jaw, was in a trance for a moment, and his feet were unstable and fell to the side. Sabo backquote. Koala hurried over. After looking at Sabo's situation, she puffed up at Kuina and said, "Kuina, you knocked Sabo out again." The temperament became clearer and purer. Kuina calmly shoved the words of Hidao in her hand, and glanced at her. "In the battle, you will never show mercy to anyone. This is the respect for the opponent. This is the past. A person told me. Is that the guy named Ron you keep talking about?" Koala couldn't help asking. Kuina nodded. "Good fight." A voice of neither man nor woman sounded. Kuina and Koala turned to look. Evikov, who had been watching the game not far away, came over. "Sabo is stronger than when I came back last time. Even armament Haki is also the master. Koala, you have to work harder." He walked up to Kuina and looked at her with emotions in his eyes. "Kuina, you have reached the realm of a swordsman who slashes iron. That's amazing. Next is Master Haki." Kuina nodded slightly. "By the way, Kuina, when I went out this time, I inquired about some Ron boys." Ivankov's words made Kuina's eyes widen for a moment, who had always been calm and cold, and his face showed a touch of surprise and excitement that Koala had hardly seen before. "Ron, where is he now?" Kuina stared at Ivankov. Koala also looked at Ivankov. She is very curious about the guy named Ron who often pops up in Kuina's mouth. Who is it that makes Kuina care so much? Kuina also said before that she had never won a victory against the guy named Ron. This should be a lie. After all, Kuina is so strong. According to our investigation, Ron Boy left Marine about a year ago, and after passing through the Devil's Triangle in Alabasta, Gecko Moria and Crackdle of 7 warlords of the sea seemed to have suffered a lot from him. When Ivankov said this, his tone was full of shock and exclamation that could not be concealed. "Diaresis, it is really unexpected that the boy who looked younger than you back then has grown to such a point now." 7 warlords of the sea suffered a big loss in his hands. Koala opened her mouth wide, her face in shock. "Is that guy named Ron so good? It's been 4 years. Ron has become so strong." Kuina murmured softly, "I have to work harder." She raised her head to look at Ivankov in front of her. "Ivankov, where is he going now? Do you know?" Ivankov shook his head. "Some people say they have seen him at Grand Line. Some people say he was in East Blue. Recently they said that there were rumors about him in South Blue. Anyway, I can't be sure, and I don't know where he is going." When Kuina heard the words, her eyes curled up, full of smiles. "Always make Ma Li Jiao unpredictable, this is really his style." "Do you want to find him?" Ivankov asked. Kuina shook her head. "It's not time yet." "Ivankov, thank you for telling me this." After thanking Kuina, she left. After she left, Koala couldn't help but look at Ivankov next to him and asked, "Is that Ron really so good?" Ivankov nodded to her earnestly. "It's really amazing. It's really necessary to fight that sand crocodile Crackdle seriously. I might not be his opponent anymore." Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. "Even you, Ivankov." Koala was shocked. Listening to Kuina, that guy named Ron seems to be 1 year younger than her. This is too pervert. Is that guy a monster? South Blue. After Jewelry Bonnie, who had the ability to make others and themselves grow old and young through touch, boarded the ship, within half a month, Ron and the others continued to travel aimlessly in South Blue, wandering one after another islands. Ron's vitality value has approached 2,000 points, and then turn on the power of LV2, his vitality will reach a very alarming and terrifying point. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, who has a weight of 70 kilograms, has finally touched the shadow of armament hockey. Canis controls the steel to reach a radius of 100 meters, the blade that can be controlled reaches 15 blades, and the speed is double the speed of sound. This day, the group came to an uninhabited island, intending to rest on the island. Ron, wearing only a pair of black beach pants and sunglasses, lay leisurely on the beach chair. Robin and Canis in swimsuits are playing beach ball, and Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi is having fun in the shallow sea. Wearing a red swimsuit and showing off his hot body, Bonnie walked to Ron's side with a coconut in his hand. "Would you like a drink?" Ron reached out and took it. Bonnie reluctantly handed out the coconut in his hand. "How do you feel?" Ron bit the straw and asked casually while drinking the coconut juice. Bonnie sat down on the sandy ground beside him, looking at the blue sea in the distance, the sea breeze blowing her long pink hair. To be honest, some are plain, some are boring, not as exciting as pirates. Bonnie hugged his knees and said, looking at the sea in front of him, "This kind of life is fine for a while. If it takes a long time, I don't know if I can accept it." She looked at Ron a little puzzled and said, "A strong guy like you really wants to stay in this kind of ordinary life, don't want to compete with the strong on the sea, and become the overlord who dominates this sea. Huh. Is this kind of plain and free life bad? I think it's good." Ron drank the sweet coconut juice and smiled, "Being the overlord of this sea, besides one trouble after another, what else can you get?" This. Bonnie just wanted to say something. The eyes under Ron's sunglasses suddenly narrowed, and a powerful aura radiated from him. "What's wrong?" Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, Canis and Robin all looked at him. As soon as I said that, the trouble came. Sitting up, Ron looked at the vast ocean directly ahead and smiled. Bonnie looked there too, but saw nothing. There was nothing above the blue sea. "What's the trouble?" "There's nothing." Bonnie couldn't help looking at Ron beside him. Ron glanced at her. "You'll know in a while, the excitement you want is coming, wait, don't be scared." Ron's eyes swept, and he looked at Robin and Canis and said, "You immediately get on the boat and get ready to set sail." Robin and Canis looked at his rare seriousness, did not dare to care, nodded at him, and ran towards the boat. Ron looked at Bonnie. "You too." Although Bonnie was puzzled, he ran towards the Voyager with them. Just when the third daughter and Xiaoqi all got on the boat and were about to start, a blue cold air diffused to the surroundings at an extremely rapid speed from the distant sea. The sea around this uninhabited island was instantly frozen. The ship was stuck in the frozen sea and could not travel at all. Canis, Bonnie and Manatee Xiaoqi, who witnessed this scene on the deck, opened their eyes wide and were shocked. "What is this?" The sea suddenly froze. Robin looked at the frozen sea in front of him, as if thinking of something in his mind. His eyes shrank sharply, his face turned white for a moment. "Is this?" "Don't panic, Canis, follow what I told you before and start another mode of this ship." Ron spoke to the people on the Voyager deck, and their calm voice instantly calmed their hearts. "Understood." Canis immediately took Xiaoqi to the cabin. Only Bonnie and Robin were left on the deck. "Coming." Ron looked at the sea in the distance, his eyes narrowed slightly. After half a minute, Bonnie saw a man riding a bicycle slowly coming here from the frozen sea in the distance. "That guy is." Bonnie does not know Aokiji now. Robin next to her looked at the figure, with a drop of cold sweat on his forehead, and his voice trembled slightly. "That's Vice Admiral, Marine Headquarters." "No, Admiral, Aokiji Kuzan." "Marine Admiral." Bonnie opened his mouth wide and stared at the guy slowly approaching on his bicycle. Why does Marine Admiral appear here? Aren't you pirates? He shouldn't come here specifically to catch you." Hearing her words, Robin bit his lips slightly, and squeezed the railing with both hands. "Aokiji will come here only possible. It is because of her, O'Hara's devil, who is offering a reward of 79 million. When Aokiji stopped on the frozen sea not far from the beach, wearing sunglasses and a casual vest, he first raised his hand to say hello to Ron on the coast. "Why, long time no see. Congratulations on becoming Admiral." Ron smiled at him. In the year he left, in order to contain more and more pirates in New World and Grand Line, Marine Headquarters will have powerful Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji promoted to Admiral one after another. It's nothing good to be Admiral. Instead, there are a lot more things to do. As Mr. Garp said, the status is high and you can't be free. Aokiji scratched his head. I still envy you for being able to relax like this. Is this your theory of lazy justice? Ron smiled at him. That's it, Aokiji said, turning his head to look at Robin on the deck. Sure enough, it's you. Nicole. Robin. Looking at Aokiji's familiar face and gaze, Robin trembled slightly, couldn't help biting his lips, and clenching his hands on the railing. Quote! Quote. Bonnie also looked at Robin beside him in shock. She is Nicole. Robin. Aokiji, if you become Admiral, please don't scare my crew. Ron, wearing black beach pants, walked barefoot from the beach to the frozen sea. Hearing what he said, Aokiji looked away, looked at Ron on the shore and squinted his eyes. I have read the investigation report on what you have done this year. Generally speaking, there is no problem. It's just that, why did you put Nicole Robin on your boat? Don't tell me you won't know her identity. Ron watched him calmly and said, now I have nothing to do with Marine. Even if you are Marine Headquarters Admiral, you shouldn't be able to interfere with my decision, right? It protects the criminals with a reward of 79 million, even if you are not a pirate, it is enough to be arrested. Aokiji said coldly. Others don't know, you should know. Ron smiled coldly at him when he heard the words. Can a child who was only 8 years old and did nothing before set a reward of 79 million pele because of his identity? This is Marine's justice. Aokiji's brows condensed while wearing sunglasses, and Marine Admiral's aura was instantly released. Bonnie and Robin on the deck of the ship instantly felt their shoulders sink, and the surrounding air became freezing and freezing. Nicole Robin is my approved travel partner. I don't agree with Marine's treatment of her. Ron stretched out his hand and slowly pulled out the thunderous Reikiri from the void. If the righteous Marine feels that it is a crime for me to protect her, then it would be fine to put me on the side of the guilty. Accompanied him to completely pull Reikiri out of the void. An equally astonishing sword intent was also released from him, turning into a spiral storm and rising into the sky, colliding with Aokiji's aura violently. The entire sea surface was windy in an instant, and the originally clear sky sank with dark clouds. Bonnie looked at the two surprisingly powerful figures on the frozen sea in the distance, sweating all over, and couldn't help swallowing. That's Admiral from Marine Headquarters. He dared to draw his sword against it. What does his mind think? No matter how strong it is, it can't be Marine Admiral's opponent. Compared to when you left Marineford, you are much stronger. Aokiji, wearing sunglasses, looked at Ron, who was holding a knife 100 meters away, and said, 7 warlords of the sea may beat you in the top ones, but, now you are still it won't be my opponent. If you insist on protecting Nicole Robin, then I can only wipe out you as a sinner as soon as possible. Hearing his words, Robin's pupils shrank. A golden thunder light flashed on the sea, accompanied by the thunderous sound of tearing the air. It instantly crossed a distance of 100 meters. A violent thunderbolt slashing with golden thunder light was Ron's answer to this Marine Admiral. Bonnie was stabbed by the golden thunder and couldn't help closing his eyes for a moment, then opened his eyes again. Ron, holding a knife in one hand, has already appeared behind Aokiji. A straight and sharp crack appeared in the frozen sea between the two of them. Bonnie was shocked to see Aokiji, whose body was cut diagonally through a huge gap, almost separated from it, but there was no blood flowing out, and Aokiji's expression was still calm. Ron glanced at the white frost that appeared on Reikiri, his eyes wrinkled slightly. Aokiji's body with his back facing him slowly turned into ice cubes, and his voice was as lazy and calm as ever. Although you defeated Crocodile, who is also a Logia-capable person, I am different from him. Now you can't defeat me. The voice fell. The sharp ice spurs rushed out on the ice, piercing Ron. Ron Armament Hockey's hardened foot stomped down heavily, the ice thorns instantly shattered, and the ice-covered sea under his feet instantly exploded a huge hole. The ice cubes around him suddenly lifted up, and then turned into huge ice beasts, engulfing them with an astonishing cold air and biting them towards Ron in the middle. In Ron's hands, Reikiri was instantly dyed purple and black by Armament Hockey. The breath of the sun, change, the breath of inflammation. Full focus. Reikiri, whose blade was rendered purple and black by Armament Hockey, was wrapped in turbulent red flames, and slammed it all around. The breath of flame 4 types. Sheng Yan's scroll. The huge flame slash turned into a swirling flame tornado, rising into the sky. The heat waves slapped around, and Bonnie and Robin on the deck couldn't help holding their hands in front of them to resist the scorching high-temperature waves. Even Yu Wei is so amazing, what a terrifying strength. Bonnie was terrified. I thought that the slash that cut off the pirate ship with one blow was the pinnacle of Ron's strength, but now it seems far from it. Ron, who is mysterious and unpredictable, and Admiral, who stands on top of Marine and represents Marine's highest combat power. What kind of battle will this be? Under the flame tornado that Ron slashed out, the huge ice beasts that had been culled were instantly killed and evaporated. Accompanied by the blazing high temperature, the shock wave of the heat wave spreads around. On the frozen sea, a full layer of ice within 100 meters radius was instantly evaporated into white steam. It appeared not far away, half of his body remained frozen, and Aokiji, who was full of cold, looked at Ron. Oh. Is it a high temperature slash with flames? Let me see, how much do you hide? Strength. He raised his hand, his palm exuded a terrifying air conditioning. Puck. As he waved his palm, 5 huge icicles rushed out of his palm towards Ron. Ron carrying Reikiri's figure flashed and disappeared in place. The 5 huge icicles slammed into the ice surface, and the powerful force shocked the frozen sea, and huge cracks spread towards the surrounding area. Ron, who appeared not far from Aokiji's side, slashed down with a knife. A purple-black slash that entangled Haki violently slashed across Aokiji's body, whose body was turned into ice, still unable to cause any damage to him. It stands to reason that even if it is elemental, as long as the attacker's attack carries Haki, the target will be hit and injured. Aokiji is logically no exception. Ron implies that Haki's slash can't hurt him. But the fact is that his attack is useless to Aokiji. Through this tentative slash, Ron, who opened the transparent world and observation Haki, found some clues. I used the color of sight and hearing to perceive the range of the attack in advance. Did you control the elementalization to avoid the range of the attack? Ron looked at him calmly. Aokiji turned his head and glanced at him, a little surprised at his sharpness and combat consciousness. Good. He didn't hide it. For a small attack like slash, I can directly avoid it by controlling the elemental body, so that I won't be hurt, even if your attack carries Haki. Aokiji looked at Ron and said with a cold air. While he was speaking, wisps of white air still overflowed from his mouth. The temperature around is getting colder and colder. Controlling elementalization seems to be the deep state of the Logia fruit ability master towards the elementalization ability. Ron's eyes condensed slightly. Carrying Haki, a small attack is useless. Is it? In this case, Ron squinted his eyes, stepped heavily on his feet, and the ground exploded. His figure resembled a cannonball and rushed straight towards Aokiji. With the full concentration of breathing, a fierce dragon-like crimson flame wrapped around the blade of Reikiri in his hand. The sword force wrapped by this sword, Haki and the unstoppable aura, made Aokiji uncontrollable. He raised his right arm that was completely frozen and the white cold air gathered. Breath of flame 5 types. Ice cube pheasant mouth. A huge ice bird rushed out of his arm wrapped in terrifying air and impact. Ron, who jumped into the air, instantly turned on the power of LV2, exuding hot bloody steam. He held Reikiri's knife handle in both hands, armament Haki opened fully, and he cut out his hand to gather momentum against the ice bird, entwining the flames. Reikiri. Yanhu. The huge flame slash turned into a huge fierce tiger burning flames, biting towards the ice bird. The moment the two sides collided, the sky and the earth were silent, and the air seemed to be frozen together. Next second, the solidified air suddenly exploded. A terrifying shock wave spread towards the surroundings. The surface of the frozen sea seemed to collapse outward in layers, and huge cracks spread to the surroundings. The Voyager was blown away directly by the shock wave. Robin hurriedly used his abilities, and his massive arms formed a pair of giant hands, which only stabilized the ship, allowing it to slide smoothly onto the ice underneath. Call. After the Voyager slipped 100 meters out of the sea and stopped, Robin couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. What is that? Bonnie's shocking whispers sounded like a dream in her ears. After turning his head to look around, Robin was also completely stunned. I saw that far away. The sea surface with a radius of 100 meters was clearly separated by huge fire and cold air. The two sides violently collided, and the stalemate was stalemate. Heat waves and cold currents rushed out of the surroundings accompanied by terrifying shock waves. The surrounding ice-bound sea continued to crumble and crack, and snow fell from the clouded sky and was melted into the air by the heat wave, turning into white steam and rising up. The scene is scary. People can't help but wonder in their hearts whether this is really a scene that human battles can create. The huge flame collided with the cold air below. Ron holding Reikiri and Aokiji holding an ice blade are fighting in close quarters. Even if Ron's power was better, Ron was still at an absolute disadvantage when the slash was not effective and the flame entangled in the blade was extinguished by the air conditioning as soon as it approached Aokiji. His limbs began to freeze, and his movements and speed were getting slower and slower. Even if his opening force exuded hot bloody steam, he couldn't resist the horrifying cold air on Aokiji's body. Transparency and observation haki have some effects on Aokiji, but they can only evade his attack and cannot make an effective attack. If you rely on armament haki's physical skills to attack Aokiji, even if you hit him, he may control the elemental dodge to evade most of his power, and at the same time, he is in danger of being instantly frozen. Shaving, Tempest Kick and Moonwalk are useless against Aokiji. After Aokiji performed another ability trick to push Ron back, he watched his limbs start to freeze, his movements slowed down, and his tone was lazy as usual. It seems that this is the limit of your strength. Call. As Aokiji raised his hand, the cold white air of ultimate exuded from his mouth. The air conditioning above completely extinguished the flame that was contending with its branch. The mass of cold air froze rapidly in the air, and huge blocks of ice froze towards Ron from all directions. Ron raised his hand and slashed. The huge sharp slash instantly shattered an unknown number of layers of ice, but soon the ice cubes immediately recovered and continued to spread towards Ron. Under this massive freezing attack, Ron was like a mayfly falling into a frozen lake, with nowhere to go. It's only real until now, is this Admiral's strength? Ron stared at Aokiji, who was frozen in the far half of his body, and slightly squeezed the handle of the Reikiri knife in his hand. Sure enough, his current strength still can't reach that height. But, a red light flashed through Ron's eyes. You said this is my full power. Do not make jokes. As Ron took a heavy step forward, the ice surface under his feet in a radius of tens of meters sank instantly, then shattered and collapsed, and countless huge ice blocks were directly shocked into the air in front of the two of them. Ron stretched out his empty left hand and drew the black sword Chushui from the void. The color of his arms was instantly wrapped, and the crimson sword was spirally wrapped around the black sword. LV2 The ultimate intention of force, fully open. LV5 Armament Haki, fully open. Sun breathing method, full focus. LV3 Transparent World plus LV4 Observation Haki, fully open. The area within a kilometer of a radius instantly showed countless details in front of Ron's eyes, and the speed of everything slowed down in his perception, including Aokiji's blood flow and the sound of his heart beating. Aokiji looked at Ron, who was exuding amazing aura at this moment, and his eyes under the sunglasses couldn't help but squint slightly. Is there any more energy left? This physique is really terrifying. Holding Chu Shui and Reikiri, two big sharp knives, Ron did not talk nonsense with Aokiji. At the peak of this state, he might only be able to support it for a minute now. Quick decision. With a slight force under his feet, his figure instantly disappeared in place. The ice surface on the original place shattered again, and the huge ice cube spreading around was also instantly cut into countless pieces by a few huge slashes that were invisible with a knife, and fell heavily to the ground. Accompanied by a sharp roar of sonic boom. The blood on the ice flickered. The huge ice block that was shaken into the air between the two was instantly cut from it, breaking into countless tiny ice blocks. The double knives wrapped around fierce haki and amazing sword strength in Ron's hands collided with the ice blades in Aokiji's hands. The air freezes instantly. ZZ. The sword energy that was winding like a thunder snake slashed in all directions, and the ice surface was becoming more and more shattered. The violent air wave spreads around. Layers of broken ice surface collapsed. Countless crushed ice cubes were blown into the sky. The Voyager, hundreds of meters away, was blown out by this shock wave again and slid out dozens of meters. After one blow, Ron, who seemed to be in a violent state, kept swinging his sword with both hands, so fast that he could hardly see his swinging arms. Each knife contains incredible strength, coupled with the sharp and amazing sword aura and the quite good armament haki, making his every slashing power amazing. Even Aokiji didn't want to get close. The black sword Chushui and Reikiri's two swords are stacked on top of each other, crisscrossing towards Aokiji. Each slash is powerful enough to cut away a pirate ship, and at this time it is the one who slashed towards Aokiji. Dozens or even hundreds, and the kind of face-to-face. Under such a powerful and rapid attack like a torrential rain, even if he could control the elementalization, he would definitely not be able to avoid it all. But Aokiji is Marine Admiral after all, Marine's top-level combat power, the top power in this sea. Faced with the violent slashes that were slashed at close range, Aokiji air-conditioned and raised his completely frozen right hand. Freezing moment. His attack at this moment finally showed Haki. And it's armament Haki who is a higher level than Ron. With Haki's blessing, the air conditioning he displayed became more and more terrifying. All the slashes Ron cut in front of him were caught by the ice cubes that continued to grow from his palms, which seemed to never end. The speed of the growth and spread of those ice cubes was even faster than that of Ron's slashing. The ice cubes are like spring bamboo shoots that grow rapidly, constantly spreading towards Ron who is slashing with a knife. At the same time, such ice cubes also grew on the ice around Ron, and they closed towards him. No matter how Ron was destroyed, these ice cubes would grow and recover at a faster rate. In the wide open eyes of Robin and Bonnie on the deck. Soon the indestructible ice cubes completely wrapped Ron in, forming a huge hockey puck on the ice. Ron in the hockey puck is still swinging his knife and slashing, but the slashing power still cannot completely wipe out the ice cubes, and the ice cubes continue to spread towards him in the huge ice hockey puck. Stop, stop. Robin, who clenched the railing, looked at the scene, shaking all over, his pupils violently turbulent. Stop it, accompanied by Robin's sorrowful cry. Aokiji, who was facing away from them, let out a cold breath. He put down his raised right hand, and most of his frozen body gradually returned to normal. The outcome has been divided. On the shattered frozen sea, when the strong white cold air dissipated, a huge crystal clear ice ball was revealed. And the moment Bonnie saw the ice puck, his eyes widened and his expression was dull. The bloodless Robin stared blankly at the huge ice ball, which was frozen like an amber worm. The black-haired young man holding double knives seemed to have all his strength taken away in an instant. The world was quiet and silent, only left. Robin made her own rapid heartbeat. Cheat, deceive. At this time, the dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and a beam of sunlight fell on the huge crystal ice hockey puck, shining brightly, and the black-haired boy who was frozen in the ice hockey puck was even more clear. It's been a long time since I was so serious, you really surprised me time and time again, traveler, Ron. Wearing a vest, Aokiji took off his sunglasses and looked at the frozen Ron inside the huge hockey puck and said to himself. You can have this kind of strength at the age of 15. You are a real monster, as Mr. Garp said. If you grow up for a while, you should be able to reach the height directly opposite me soon. And you like this, you will be so desperate for a Nicole who has only been together for less than a year. Robin. A complex look flashed in Aokiji's eyes. To list an 8-year-old girl who has never done anything as a criminal with a reward of 79 million yuan. Is this really justice? As early as where his best friend Saul died, Aokiji began to question the absolute justice this Marine believed in. This question still has no answer to this day. But through this battle, Aokiji learned one thing. He glanced at the ship in the distance. Nicole Robin, you finally found a real shelter. Congratulations. If it is this guy, you should be able to carry your life well. Just when Aokiji raised his hand, intending to lift the huge hockey puck. Zizi. A golden light flashed from the inside of the huge ice ball, and a crack appeared on the smooth and hard surface of the ice ball. Aokiji was taken aback, and looked intently. I saw golden thunder and lightning flashing on the right foot of the black-haired young man holding a long knife and frozen inside the huge ice hockey. An astonishing and terrifying destructive force gushed out of it, accompanied by a rhythm-like breathing, constantly impacting the hockey puck. The cracks in the huge hockey puck are getting bigger and bigger. A few moments later, Aokiji suddenly exploded before the startled Aokiji's eyes. Countless icicles and crushed ice look like crystal-clear gems in the sunlight. Like a god breaking through a cocoon, the black-haired boy who has regained his freedom, grinned at Aokiji among the fine jewels scattered all over the sky. I knew you had no intention to kill, you are still a good man, Aokiji. Thank you for staying with me in the battle, for allowing me to fully recognize my strength. See you next time, and I will invite you to drink. After saying these words, Ron stepped on the frozen sea with his right foot surging with golden lightning, and disappeared in front of Aokiji in an instant. With his stepping, the terrifying destructive force spread directly downward for hundreds of meters. The ice-covered sea surface with a thickness of 100 meters split into a huge hole in an instant, and the seawater under the ice layer of 100 meters spouted from the center of the hole. With a wave of Aokiji's hand, the seawater that was tens of meters high froze again. He turned his head and looked at the Voyager, which was escaping quickly from the bottom of the ship with its tracks exposed, and a smile flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, an interesting guy. He put on his sunglasses again, got on his bicycle, and went away in the opposite direction of the boat. Nico Robin handed it to you. Let me take a good look at what you insist on and what kind of results will eventually lead to. On the deck of the Voyager, Ron lay on the ground, his chest rising and falling violently, panting heavily. Finally, it's over. Marine Admiral's strength is really not covered. With tears still hung in the corners of his eyes, Robin sat slumped on the ground, staring at him blankly, and still hadn't recovered. Bonnie looked at him in shock. Unexpectedly, I was able to escape from that Marine Admiral's hands. At this time, her back was completely drenched, and while she was afraid, she felt a stimulus, excitement from the bottom of her heart that she had never felt before. Mingming said before that they would feel dull and boring following Ron. Turning around, they met Marine Admiral and ran away from him. This, isn't it exciting? Is being a pirate really more exciting than this? Excited and trembling, Bonnie stared at Ron lying on the deck. Anyway, be sure to hug this thigh tightly. This ship, I've ordered jewelry. Bonnie. A week after Ron and Aokiji met, Aokiji returned to the Marine headquarters of the Grand Line, Marineford. What, you said you didn't find them? Sengoku propped his hands on the table and yelled to Aokiji, what the hell is going on? Kabuto's Aokiji with one hand in his pants grabbed his hair, and his attitude was as casual as before, I'm very sorry. Sengoku just wanted to say something more. Garp, who was sitting by and eating donuts, said, well, South Blue is not too small. If Ron is running around, it's really hard to find. Sengoku, don't be embarrassed by Kuzan. Shut up, Garp. Sengoku glared at him fiercely, if it wasn't for the horrible suggestion you gave back then, is there anything like today? Wow, ha 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 ha, is it the old man's head again? Garp laughed heartily. Annoyed, Sengoku sat back in his seat. Since you didn't find them, then I will send someone else. Send someone else? Can New World and Grand Line now be able to recruit people? Garp interjected again. Sengoku didn't care about it at this time, but thought about it. Indeed, now Whitebeard, Big Mom, and the Beast Kaido on the New World side have the power to become emperor, coupled with the rapid rise of red hair pirates. New World can be said that the various forces are competing together. Chaos like Hengsheng, a lot of Marines' high-end combat power has been transferred there. The Grand Line cannot be ignored either. The pirate supernovas popped up one by one, all of them were troublesome. Sengoku's brows tightened. Aokiji, wearing a coat of justice, put his hands back in his pants. Kabuto looked at Sengoku and said, that. Sengoku raised his head to look at him, and Garp raised his eyes to look at him too. I think this matter can be left alone for now. Aokiji looked straight at Sengoku. Percent at Z at ****. You mean to put the remnant of Ohara, who is offering a reward of 79 million Bailey, Nicole. Robin does not care. Sengoku's eyes condensed slightly. Her threat to Marine is that she may be able to interpret the text of history. Actual combat power is nothing to Marine. Aokiji said lazily. Now if she becomes Ron's companion, follow him in East Blue South Blue runs around, where do we go to interpret the historical text? So I think it's better to let Nico Robin enter the Grand Line in New World and become the target of those big power pirates. There is no need to make Marine and Ron, who may become Nico Robin's companion, stand in opposition because of this kind of thing. It should be even more difficult to deal with by then. After listening to Aokiji's words, Sengoku lowered his head and thought. Indeed, compared to Nico Robin being scrambled by New World's big pirates who are aiming to become the king, the chaos in the sea is even more intense. It is undoubtedly a better way to let her stay beside Ron, far away from New World, the center of the chaos. Only, can you guarantee that they will not enter the Grand Line in New World? This cannot be guaranteed, Aokiji said casually, but by then, the chaos in New World should be stabilized a bit, and we Marine can also free up. Sengoku thought for a while, and looked at Garp, who was eating the donuts, with an expression that had nothing to do with me. Garp, what do you think? Have no idea. Garp buttoned his nose. And didn't you tell me to shut up? Sengoku has veins emerging from his forehead. This guy. He took a deep breath and didn't care about this guy who likes to keep accounts. He crossed his hands on the table and looked at Aokiji with a serious face. Then this matter will be handled according to your proposal for the time being. Nico Robin's news should be blocked and never leaked to the troublesome guys in New World. South Blue. After stalking Bonnie, he revealed his firm willingness to board the ship and took the initiative to take on all the tasks of cleaning the ship. Ron finally agreed to let her get on the boat. After eating the Paramesha devil fruit with an unknown fruit name, Jewelry Bonnie, who has the ability to make oneself and others younger or older through touch, officially became the 6th crew member on this Voyager, including Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi. After traveling around South Blue for a year, the group went to West Blue, the birthplace of the Mafia. Sea Circle calendar was 1516, Ron was 16 years old. A lot of things happened this year. The most famous one was Red Hair Pirates, which rose strongly in the New World, and became the 4th after the Whitebeard Pirates, the Big Mom Pirates and Kaido's Beasts Pirates. Imperial Power. In New World, there is a new situation where the 4 emperors will contend against each other separately. At this point, the power struggle on the sea has gradually stabilized. The formation of the 4 emperors' force, the Marine Force, and the 7 warlords of the Sea Force is a three-way relationship that restrains and influences each other. Of course, this is only the stability on the surface, and the friction and struggle between the various forces in the secret is still happening. And none of this has anything to do with Ron. He is now taking Robin, Kanis Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi, and Bonnie, who has been in for a year, to sign in on the various islands of West Blue, and are on a journey and adventure in the Mafia world. It has to be said that West Blue's Mafia and pirates have become stronger in battles and gunfire, and their strength is obviously higher than that of the stable East Blue and South Blue. On this day, came the 4th month of West Blue. Ron and others encountered the Flame Tank Pirates, which had already made a name for themselves in West Blue. Its captain is the 9th among the 11 supernovas after the start of the future plot, and the strong fruit of the city, Capone Beige, now offers a bounty of 88 million Baileys. When the two sides met, Beige was leading the Flame Tank Pirates to launch a ruthless bombardment against a group of rival mafia who wanted to destroy their Iron Axe pirates in one fell swoop. Artillery roared on the sea and dozens of pirate ships were on the scene. The surface of the sea burned, and the shining surface was red. Ron and others who passed by at the time stopped not far away and watched the battle. After Beige spotted the unnamed ship watching from a distance, he was provoked to kill him and immediately ordered shelling against it. Then, there is no more. Even without Ron, Kanis, Robin, Xiaoqi and Bonnie, who have grown a lot after a year of travel, all eliminated the Flame Tank Pirates that had just won. Life's ups and downs are nothing but this. Seeing that he was about to die under the combined attack of Kanis and Robin, Beige panicked and saved his life from Kanis at the cost of a devil fruit and all his wealth. Later, he was turned into a child by Bonnie and brought Ron and others back to his castle on an island, from which he obtained all the wealth Beige has collected so far, worth almost 500 million Baileys. A zone devil fruit, unfortunately, is just an ordinary one. Ron, in front of Beige, fed the fruit to the cloud fox standing on Kanis's shoulders. After eating this common zone bird fruit, Yunhuzisi's body suddenly became several times larger, sitting there almost the same height as the 1.8-meter robin. And it has grown a pair of snow-white wings. After spreading the huge wings, it can also fly with people. The big snow-white tail became bigger and fluffy, the kind that was big enough to make people lie on it, the kind that felt very good, and the kind that the hair control was absolutely hard to refuse. The cloud fox silk, which eats the fruits of birds and birds, seems to have completely detached from the cloud fox species, and has become a strange creature that can fly in the sky. Perhaps it is more appropriate to call it a sky fox. Canis, Robin, and Bonnie all liked Cece's changes, and they bury their faces on it, rubbing and rubbing them, enjoying them very much. Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi also likes its big soft and fluffy tail very much. It is really uncomfortable to sleep in it. According to the agreement, Ron spared Bedge's life after getting the money and devil fruit. But this incident also thoroughly spread the reputation of this nameless ship throughout West Blue. Combine the descriptions of some people who have been to East Blue and South Blue. Immediately, this powerful, unknown and purposeless, unnamed ship wandering around was connected with the mysterious ship in East Blue and South Blue rumors. Rumors and legends of that mysterious ship soon spread on West Blue. The name of the captain of the mysterious ship, the traveler Ron, also spread on the islands of West Blue. The mafia and pirates of West Blue, after knowing that the flame tank pirate group was suddenly destroyed, and Captain Bedge became more and more vigilant and fearful of the mysterious ship. Ships, order them to be cautious about unknown and lone ships under their hands, and try not to conflict with them. This also made Ron and others' subsequent trips in West Blue much calmer. In the last few months of the year, Ron and others arrived in the country of flowers in the east of West Blue. After setting foot on the large island where the country of flowers is located, Ron's vitality has officially reached 3,000 points. Armament hockey also reached LV6. In terms of swordsmanship, he reached the Grandmaster from the realm of slashing iron. Although he is not a great swordsman, he is still considered to be the top group of swordsmen. This day, Ron took Canis, Robin and the others through an ice continent. From a distance, I saw a tall and burly figure hitting the smooth, green, hard ice surface again and again for the first time, and there were many people surrounded by it. The frozen earth vibrated again and again with his impact. Canis looked over there curiously and said, "Why does that guy keep hitting the ice with his head?" Robin recognized the origin of the group of people, and also recognized the identity of the old man who hit the ice with his head. She smiled at Canis, who was almost as high as her next to her, that is the leader of the Green Pepper family in the country of flowers. Green Pepper is the pillar of the 12th generation of the pirates of the Kingdom of Flowers, 8 Treasure Water Army. The boss, once was a big pirate who offered a reward of 500 million, but now he has retired. 500 million. Just the old man with the sunken head. Bonnie, who turned into a little girl with long pink hair, was a little shocked. Robin hid his mouth and smiled. His head was not so flat in the past, but tapered. At that time, his cone was his most proud weapon. Even this piece was buried with countless treasures, it was hard. The incomparable Baoyu ice bed can only be opened with his cone. So amazing. Bonnie was slightly speechless. Then why is his head flat now? I heard it was beaten by the marine hero, Garp Vice Admiral more than 20 years ago. Robin laughed. So, it's not surprising that it is the marine hero Garp. Bonnie nodded. Garp, the humpbacked old man Green Pepper who was hitting the treasure jade iceberg where his wealth was buried with his iron head power stopped the impact, his snow-white beard fluttered, his face turned like a devil and looked in the direction of Ron and others. Robin, Canis and Bonnie were all taken aback. Standing next to them, wearing a black fur coat, his body became more and more slender. Ron, with a black knife on his waist, looked there and smiled. It seems that your conversation just now has been heard clearly. Woolen cloth. No way, can you hear it from such a distance? Bonnie was a little surprised. Is that hunchback old man's hearing so good? The frozen ground shook. The huge figure of Green Pepper rushed here like a cannonball. It seems that I heard it. Canis smiled wryly. Robin watched the huge figure rushing forward, and nodded. Sure enough, you shouldn't talk about others behind your back. At a distance of a few hundred meters, Green Pepper only took 3 seconds. His huge body fell heavily in front of a few people, his beard and hair fluttering, his eyes looked down at the few people terribly, and his aura was amazing. You are talking about Garp, right? Say, who are you from Garp? Canis and Robin, Bonnie's long hair fluttered backwards blown by his aura, but the 3 daughters looked at him with a relaxed and natural face, without any fear. The Kung Fu Manatee Xiaoqi next to him looked at him and even a little eager to try. Garp, he and I are acquaintances. Ron smiled. Ron, who has grown to a height of 1.8 meters, is still very small compared to the 5 or 6 meters tall and huge Green Pepper. Gar's, acquaintance. A bit of hatred flashed across Green Pepper's eyes. As long as it is a guy related to Garp, the old man will never let it go. With anger and hatred in his voice, he stretched out his big hand and squeezed it towards the black-clothed and black-haired boy in front of him. At this time, the members of the 8 Treasures Marine Corps who came to this ice continent with Jiao Jiao Green Pepper also rushed over here. The leader carried a Yongdao, who was the deputy of the 8 Treasure Marine Corps. Dongliang, Lao Kai of Grandmaster 8 Punch Boxing. He looked at the outstanding black-clothed teenager and the outstanding women, and the Kung Fu manatee wearing a steel vest and carrying a huge package beside them, with a gleam of doubt in his eyes. These guys are. Without waiting for him to think about it, the palm of the green pepper swayed in a state of resentment had already exhausted the air and grabbed the black-clothed teenager with a black knife on his waist. At the moment when he was about to be grasped by the big hand, the black-clothed boy disappeared in place like a teleport. Lao Kai's eyes narrowed. What an amazing speed. Where? He glanced around, and observation hockey unfolded. When he noticed that the black-clothed boy appeared suddenly in the air, Lao Kai hurriedly reminded, "Pillar. You don't need to say it." Green Pepper threw a fist into the air with a backhand. The black-haired boy in a black coat also threw a punch in the air. 2 fists, one big and one small disproportionately, collided together. The air solidified in an instant, and then exploded. An astonishing wave of air instantly spread to the surroundings and sweat. Lao Kai couldn't help holding his hand in front of him, while the 8 Treasure Marine Army behind him was blown back several meters by the air wave. In the shocked gaze of Lao Kai, Green Zhao's fist was shaken by the fist of the black-clothed boy, and Green Zhao's huge body was staggered by a punch, and he took 2 steps backwards. How could it be? The leader was beaten back. Don't talk nonsense, the leader must be careless. Yes, it must be so. But that guy seems to be very strong. The 8 Treasure Marines talked a lot. After feeling the green pepper with the horror of the punch standing firmly, his eyes fixed on the black-clothed boy who fell on the green ice. The strength of this fist makes the old man feel like Garp's hateful guy. Boy, give the old man his name. Ron raised his right hand and made a light fist. Armament hockey of LV6 instantly hardened his arms, turning his entire arm into pitch black. He glanced at Green Pepper and said, "If you beat me, I will tell you." Interesting. Green Pepper instantly became excited. He raised his sturdy right arm. Armament hockey instantly hardened and punched Ron down. Ron, who had reached 3,000 vitality points, faced his attack, and his hardened arm pierced through the air, blasting upwards wrapped in a fiery wave of air. The moment when 2 dark fists, one big and one small, collided together. The world is quiet. The solidified air between the 2 suddenly cracked, like a glass with countless silver-white cracks on one side. Accompanied by the collision of this punch, Green Pepper's Conqueror's Hockey was activated, and the moment he felt his Conqueror's Hockey, Ron's Conqueror's Hockey, who reached LV2 in Ron's body, was like an enraged tiger and was instantly activated. Both Conqueror's Hockey collided. Along with a wave of pressure caused by the collision of Conqueror's Hockey spreading around, all the 8 Treasure Marines behind Lao Kai were stunned and fainted, turning the Byakugan one by one and falling over. And Lao Kai himself was in a daze for a moment, and after recovering his senses, cold sweat broke out on his forehead. This is Conqueror's Hockey, collision. Along with the collision of the 2 Conqueror's Hockey, countless blood-colored lightning appeared around the 2 figures, and waves of air visible to the naked eye snaked out from the collision of the 2 fists. The bold impact engulfed in circles of deterrence and pressure was accompanied by an astonishing gust of wind spreading around, and the 8 Treasure Marine Corps fainted and fell to the ground were blown out like leaves. Astonishing visions also appeared in the sky, with countless blood-colored cracks all over the sky. This ice island vibrated constantly under the impact and collision of the 2 Conquerors' Hockey, and the surrounding sea was full of wind and waves. Robin and Connus couldn't help but show shock. This is also the first time they have seen the collision of Conquerors' Hockey. Unexpectedly it was so amazing. Bonnie, who had turned into a little girl with long pink hair, looked at the black-haired figure with his back facing them, wearing a black coat that was constantly swaying under the impact of the strong wind. Compared to the huge size of Green Pepper, that figure is not worth mentioning. But in Bonnie's eyes, it looked extremely tall, as if as long as there was this figure, he could feel extremely relieved. At the beginning, she insisted on getting on the ship, on the one hand because of Ron's great strength, on the other hand, because she saw with her own eyes that Ron could fight Marine Admiral for the sake of his companions on the ship. It was this loyalty that made Bonnie at the time firm in his decision to go on board and become their partner anyway. In the following year and a half, Bonnie deeply felt that he had chosen the right one. Thinking of this, Bonnie, a little girl with long pink hair, looked at Ron's back, with a smile on her mouth. Compared to when he was fighting Aokiji a year and a half ago, his own captain is much stronger. How could a pirate with 500 million in his peak period be his opponent? Just now, the terrifying force contained in Ron's pitch-black right fist burst out, and in an instant he pressed Green Pepper's fist. In the eyes of Lao Kai, whose eyes were almost staring out, he directly knocked the huge Green Pepper away. Go out. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Unexpectedly, the leader can be beaten with a punch. With a trembling body, Lao Kai, holding a Yongdao, looked at the calm black-clothed youth not far away, with cold sweat on his face. Where did such a guy come from? The green pepper that was blown out fell heavily on the incomparably hard Baoyu ice bed. When he opened his eyes and looked at Ron, who hadn't taken a step not far away, there was a touch of shock in his eyes. What a terrifying vigor! Does this guy have the special blood of the giants? Although he understood the power of the mysterious boy in front of him, Qing Zhao didn't intend to give in. He stepped on his feet and rushed out like a cannonball. Armament Hockey's hardened flat head slammed down at him. Before he could get close, a powerful shock wave rushed towards Ron. 8 punches, what 2 hits? Looking at the attack that is about to hit in front of him. Ron's mind was not about dodge arrival or how to fight back, but thinking. Can his current punch make his flat head into a sharp cone again? Probably no problem. Just pay attention to the next angle. Thinking about it, the hard, flat head with a hardened green pepper color came to him. Ron raised his right arm, which was dark as steel, and hit it twice as fast as before, and landed on the dark flat head of the green pepper. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, an astonishing gust of wind swept around. After Ron fully displayed the terrifying power of a physique with 3,000 vitality points, the pitch-black flat head of the green pepper began to change. Like smelted steel, it began to change from the collapsed state back to the pointed cone shape. Lao Kai, who had witnessed this scene with his own eyes, was about to stare out. Canis, Robin and Bonnie were also dumbfounded. Flat head, can it be beaten into a cone again? With a heavier punch than the previous time, Ron directly hit the green pepper flat head back into a pointed cone shape, and at the same time knocked him out, and was beaten out again, smashing into an ice peak. The pointed head, which turned into a sharp cone shape, directly pierced the hard ice peak, causing the fainted green pepper to be inserted diagonally on the ice peak, forming a very unique scenery. After half a day, on this turquoise and crystal clear ice continent, the green pepper, which turned back into a cone again, brought Lao Kai and other 8 treasure marines to bow down in front of Ron and the others. This kind of kindness is hard to repay even if you die. From then on, Ron will be the great benefactor of my green pepper family and the 8 treasure marines. But with the order, my green pepper will never die. The green pepper that fell on the ice bowed his head and said to Ron. Robin, Canis, and Bonnie listened to the grateful words of the big pirate who offered a reward of 500 million Baileys in his heyday, and watched him fall to the ground with a group of his men. The dark and overwhelming scenery made their hearts feel a little shaken. Don't hesitate to die. When Ron heard what he said, he smiled and touched the crystal clear water-like surface of the hard ice with his feet. What if I say I want the wealth of money under this place? When Green Pepper heard the words, he was taken aback for a moment, and a touch of entanglement and hesitation flashed in his eyes, but he quickly became firm. He raised his head and looked at Ron sternly and said, "If Ron wants it, I will open the ice bed of precious jade and take out this wealth of gold and give it to you." Compared with the great kindness of helping to restore the cone head, this fortune is nothing at all. Thinking of this, Green Pepper immediately used the armed color to harden the cone, concentrated the huge force on the sharp head, and then slammed the pitch-black cone towards the extremely hard ice surface below. Boom! The earth shook. A crack appeared on the surface of the incomparably smooth blue ice from the point hit by the cone, and then burst open from it. A huge crack hundreds of meters long and tens of meters deep appeared on the thick ice. Appearing in front of everyone, there are countless treasures that radiate light from below. Wow! Bonnie's eyes, which looked like a little girl, instantly turned into Bailey's symbol. Canis and Robin also looked surprised. There are so many treasures buried under here. How much money is there? As far as the eye can see, within 100 meters of the surrounding area, there are thick layers of gold and silver treasures. Ron stepped on these golden treasures and looked at the green peppers in front of him and said, "Give it all to me and I don't have to, but I will take some of it when I leave the island." When Lao Kai and the 8 treasure marines heard the words, they all cast very grateful, respectful glances at Ron with wet eyes. Some people were even more moved with tears. Under Ron's crown, what a good man of noble character. Qing Zhao was a little anxious when he heard the words, "Well, how can this be done? Even if you give me all the treasures here, your kindness will not be enough to repay you, but only a part of it. So I trouble you to do me a favor." Ron pointed to a piece of Kung Fu manatee Shaoqi who was playing with gold coins and said, "That's my disciple, Alabasta's Kung Fu manatee, whose name is Shaoqi. In the next few months, you will help me teach it." Green Pepper was taken aback when he heard the words, and looked at the little manatee wearing a thick steel vest. Shaoqi, who heard the conversation between the two, looked here, her small eyes gleaming at the green pepper, and her tail flicked quickly. "Huh, master. Does this powerful old man really want to teach me boxing skills?" When they heard it, Qing Zhao, Lao Kai and others were taken aback. Manatee is talking. Ron looked at Shaoqi and smiled, fun with all his strength to show them. "Learn," Shaoqi said, her expression straightened, and she began to close her fists. Immediately, Qing Zhao, Lao Kai and the crowd of 8 treasure marines were dumbfounded, almost staring their eyes out. I saw armament hockey on the right fist that the manatee put away, instantly turning its small fist into pitch black like steel. It looked serious and threw a punch forward. Boom! The air in front of it exploded, and with the fierce punching force, a violent shock wave rushed forward, blowing all the gold coins on the ground within more than 10 meters in front of it. The 8 treasures marine army behind Lao Kai widened his eyes, opened his mouth wide, and his chin almost fell to the ground in shock. A manatee can also master armament hockey and boxing skills. Ron looked at Green Zhao and Lao Kai who were equally dumbfounded and smiled. "How about?" Even Ron Myangxia said, "That's naturally no problem, the old man will definitely teach him what he has learned." Green Pepper came back to his senses and assured Ron. After Ron took away 40% of all the treasures here, he took Robin, Canis, and Bonnie to leave the continent of ice. Kung Fu manatee Shaoqi stayed beside Green Zhao, and followed him to learn iron head skills and 8 punches. Soon, several months passed. After Ron and the others traveled to the rest of the islands outside West Blue, they returned to the Island of Flowers and picked up from the Green Pepper family who had learned 8 punches, iron head skills, and many other skills. At the end of the Sea Circle calendar in 1516, the Voyager left West Blue.